just being sarcastic.
Give them the feel for it, right?
I can get the feel for free. I mean, the feel from BFA.
Now you got it down.
Oh, those yellow.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Good evening, everyone. I call this city council meeting, the special city council meeting, to order. May I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Elliott.
Here.
Councilmember Rogie.
Here.
Councilmember Fitzhenry.
Here.
Councilmember Sandal.
Here.
Mayor Gotel.
Here. Tonight, we have one agenda item. This is a discussion of the 2012 revised 2013 proposed budget and 2013 preliminary tax levy. And I'll turn it over to City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and members of the City Council. Tonight we're going to go through, as you know from past experience, a rather lengthy presentation of the 2013 proposed budget and tax levy. And we'll be having, I'll make some comments. Mr. Regis will make a large part of the presentation, and then department directors will make presentations regarding their own departments. I want to start off by saying a couple of things. One thing is that, you know, with the added projects that we've done these last few years, we have incurred growing debt service obligations that we hadn't had in the past. And that's something that we had to obviously provide for in this budget. And you'll see as we go through the budget, and at the end there are some options that we can talk about. This is a very scaled back, again, budget. And we can, again, talk about that as we go through it. The information that we have here is pretty late arriving. Some of the stuff that we're going to present to you tonight, we just became really aware of some of that information, yesterday?
About 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock yesterday. So when you see this, the good news of it is that with the maturation of the ILN tax increment district, the impact of our levy that we'll be talking about on homeowners is going to be very minimal. But having said that, we have a tax levy increase that we have to take a look at. Again, we have debt service obligations that we have to look at. And I guess with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Regis to start the presentation.
Thanks, Steve.
Could I just ask, in case this is televised, right?
Absolutely.
Could you just define what the ILN is in case people don't
Oh,
understand?
yes, thank you. The Interstate Lindell-Nicollet tax increment area is that area that is basically between 77th Street and 494. And includes, John, maybe you could help me out. What's in the ILN specifically? That would be good for people to know.
Yes, the ILN includes Meridian Crossings, the shops at Lindale, the Sheraton Four Points Hotel, the Candlewood Hotel. Those are the primary things.
And so the bottom line, and thank you for bringing that up, council member, is that, yeah, the city did this some 25 years ago, and this is when it's a big payoff to the taxpayers, because all of that property base tax capacity, which is part of what you levy your taxes against, all gets lumped onto the tax base in one tax year. And so it's going to be a significant increase in our tax capacity.
One quick comment too, Mr. Regis, as you go through. I'm sure we all looked through this. I know I did, and I actually looked through it again today. Would you point out the new information so that we catch it? If you've got something today.
It'll show up near the end.
Okay.
When I do an estimate on what the impact on certain properties is and stuff, and I'll point those out. I mean,
Okay.
It's not real direct in here, but I can point it out for you.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Steve, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As you've seen several years in the past, the 2013 budget is basically local services funded by local taxes. I mean, our budget has really shifted to where now taxes is the majority of the funding for the budget. Calendar of events and dates, our meeting tonight, September 5th, but then next Tuesday at the council meeting, we'll adopt a preliminary levy. The Truth in Taxation hearing, we're recommending December 4th, 2012. That'll also be brought up at the meeting next Tuesday. And then we'll certify the final levy on December 11th, 2012. Some of the key issues for 2013, as I just mentioned, property taxes remain the primary funding source. There are no levy limits in 2013. 2013 LGA is certified at $1.2 million. However, there may be some doubt as to whether we'll receive that money, as the state for their 2014-2015 biennium is looking at about $1 billion deficit right now, and usually the first things that they look at is state aid. So whether we get any or all of that remains to be seen after probably this winter's legislative session. To offset some of that fear and caution there, we've only budgeted for $400,000 of the 2013 LGA in our general fund budget, and that follows along with our process of trying to wean ourselves off of our dependence on LGA. Also, in the 2013 levy, we've got $700,000 included in there for rolling stock and computer equipment needs. And as Steve mentioned, the ILN TIF district will be decertified at the end of 2012. Here's just a history of the state aid, and you can see basically starting in 2008, a lot of the unallotments and then the reductions and then the freeze of the level in 2012 and 2013. And I don't expect the aid levels to go up in the future. Probably will continue to decrease. Just a revenue comparison, if you look way back to 2001, revenue, taxes and intergovernmental revenues, which LGA is the largest part of, were basically equal. Now you're looking in 2013, our taxes equal 70% of their general fund revenues, and while intergovernmental revenues are only 7%.
Chris, can I just intercede for just a second? And I think for people watching at home, it's important to understand when you look at this graph. Yeah, it's significant when you look at 2001, taxes were 38% and intergovernmental revenue was 39%. In 2013, the taxes are 70% of our general fund, while intergovernmental revenue is 70%. Well, with that general fund, we're also looking at the debt service that we're paying off at the same time. And to keep our tax levy at the kind of levels that we've kept it at these last few years as we've really bitten the bullet on changing that number from 38% to 70% it's difficult. And that's one of the reasons that we have basically kept a cap on or have a very baseline kind of general fund budget. Again, to be able to absorb all of that and not have huge, tax levy increases, which I know folks don't want to see, it's difficult, and so you've got to be very sparing on the money that you invest in the general fund.
Well, just in line with the debt service levies, last 2 years, maybe 3 years, I've shaved the amounts that the bond documents recommend that we levy. I've shaved them down probably $20,000, $30,000 per issue, just because I've got cash on hand. But I'm reaching a point now where I won't be able to do that anymore because by the time the bonds mature, I won't have enough funding in the debt service fund to do it. So this is probably the last year I'm going to be able to do that. Just looking at straight local government aid, you can see from 2012 to 2013, it's only approximately 2% of general fund revenues. And again, that's part of the council direction to basically eliminate our dependence on LGA. The 2013 proposed gross levy is, right now, it's at $17,744,951. It's an increase of 4.5% over the 2012 levy. Now, I do want to point this out. This is an increase over what I reported in the budget message. In the budget message in your proposed document, I said the levy increase was 3.66%. The difference is I overlooked one of the new bond issues, and I did not include that levy in the calculation. Once I realized that, which was after I had published everything, I had to add that back in, so I apologize for the confusion over that. But with that in there, that brings the levy up to 4.5%. The general of this total $17 million, you can see the general fund levy is $14,687,000. There's the equipment levy that I mentioned earlier for $700,000, and here's the debt service levy that Steve had just mentioned. It's over $2 million, and then we have the tax abatement levy of $309,000 to give us that $17 million total. And here's just a graphic of the gross tax levy history. You can see how we've done the last several years. Now, within, it's not included in this budget as of yet. Council has asked staff to look at the neighborhood inspection program and adding in another CSO. We've looked at that, and if we were to do that, if council directs us to do it, it would be an increase of $59,000 to the general fund. It would increase the levy from 4.5 to 4.86 and would add about $4.50 of taxes to a $175,000 home.
And let me just interject again. And this is one of the decision points that the council will have to make somewhere along the line as to what you want to do with this. Personally, $59,000, I mean, that is what it costs to actually put a CSO on the street and all the support that goes with it. where we actually have a CSO, more CSO time covering going in and looking at properties, looking at backyards, looking at all those kinds of things. We could do something less for less. And I personally, I have a hard time adding more money to this levy, personally. But it's not my decision. The city council will make that decision, and it's your decision to make. You know, if pardon me?
Do.
Well, you know, obviously you get what you pay for. The best coverage that you could get is what we're looking at here. That's the best. Where we'd have CSO time in the summer where you would go through and you could go into backyards of properties and do some of that heavy inspection kind of work that we've done in the past. You know, other ways of looking at it, you could do something less, I believe, by getting so you didn't do that kind of in-depth inspection, but you had more coverage where you just where you did more of that eyeballing inspection from the street level. And maybe there's cheaper ways to do that. For one thing, I wouldn't send, and I haven't even sat and talked with Todd about this, but one thing we wouldn't do is we wouldn't send somebody into somebody's backyard without them being a CSO or being in uniform, just because it's not a very safe and a very smart thing to do. And people object a lot of times, and I can understand why people would be concerned about someone other than a uniformed person going in their backyard. If we just tried to put some more coverage on the street, looking at it from a streetscape kind of thing, what's visible to the eye, we could probably do that for less money. You know, could you do something even less than that? Yeah, you could. I mean, maybe we could engage our neighborhood blocks to start looking and taking a more active interest in looking at yards within their neighborhoods and reporting them to us, so that we could take.
That was part of the task force before they.
Yeah, we've tried to do all that, and you know, I think, and Councilmember Brogy has put it out a number of times. People are very reticent to call us with anything because they're afraid, and I understand, they're afraid that their neighbors are going to find out. That won't happen because we would never tell, but that we could say that a million times, and if people still feel uncomfortable with calling, there's nothing we'd be able to do to change their mind. And it's not something you have to really figure out tonight. We have time to think about it, because when you get through the whole budget presentation, you'll see why we have time to deal with it. But
because I mean, even if people volunteer, they don't have to do their own neighborhoods.
No, yeah, well, they don't. Although, you know, the way I look at it is, I look at in my own neighborhood. If somebody is abusing our neighborhood, not being respectful to our neighborhood, I mean, if they're having loud parties all the time, or they're, you know, parking in violation, yeah, I'm one of the first persons that calls City Hall and tells police what's going on. And and I don't care if people know that I do it or not, personally, but that's just me. But I just think that, you know, if people look in their neighborhoods and someone's basically disrespecting their neighborhood by the way that they're keeping up their property, or by the way they're abusing the noise ordinance, or parking or whatever, that they give us a call or use the internet to get that information to us. One of the things that we've done since the property task force, we've gotten a lot better at getting at these properties quickly and getting from step one to the bottom line with these people really fast. I mean, it's not like the old days, Councilmember Brogy, back when, you know, they got one warning and another warning and another warning, and sometimes I think there was a joke, you know, to some of these people. You get your warning, and that's the last warning you get from us. The next time we come to visit you, it's with a violation notice, or if you don't do it fast enough, we'll come there and do it ourselves, and we'll certify it to your property taxes as a nuisance abatement, and you'll be seeing that on the 11th. We've got a lot of those coming forward. So this is something to think about, how you want to handle it and what you want to do with the levy. Again, you've got a lot of time to think about it. You've got a preliminary levy that you can adopt on that you should adopt on September 11th. You can always put money in and then reduce it back out again if you don't want to do it, but there's other funds in here that you might be able to use for this, or a portion of it, as we go through the budget.
Councilman.
Steve, if possible, I mean, when you talk about something less for less, if if you, or I'm assuming we can all come up with ideas too, but if you
Yeah.
can give us something definitive, so we're looking at, because I think I agree with Fred that it is a shame that the inspection program that was set up that way, that it's run into a budget constraints. And if there is something, some alternatives, that is something less for less that we can view, at least it gives us some options
Yeah.
in coming up with what we believe probably the best resolution
We-
to follow through with the program.
Thank you, Councilmember. We can do that. I do want to say, though, that if we're looking at what Councilmember Rogie is talking about and that other inspection program, this is basically the kind of price tag it would take to put it back. I just want council to know that.
Councilmember.
Is this a full-time, year-round? Or is this somebody you're only hiring for, April through October?
I'm going to let Todd speak
Okay,
to
'cause that's
that.
important, because I don't understand how this could cost $59,000.
That has all the benefit roll-ups in it. It has all the support that goes with it,
My-
everything.
My comment a couple weeks ago was, why can't this be a temporary job without benefits or whatever?
Oh.
But the wages that are dictated.
Well-
I mean, I don't know if part-timers, what they get for
Okay, that's a good-
benefits,
yeah.
okay?
Good, again, a very good point, and for people watching at home. If you're talking about a CSO officer, I mean, a CSO position, whether it's full-time or part-time, is a position that is defined in the city resolution, that has a definitive salary schedule, step progression, and it has defined benefits. And we don't hire those people as intermittent people. They're all people who work more than 20 hours a week and are defined as regular part-time employment. And so they get a pro rata share of benefits, of all the city benefits, and that.
But what if you're hiring them is like you do with lifeguards? You don't have lifeguards here in the wintertime.
That, when I talk about something less, that's probably the kind of thing we would talk about, but I'll let
Okay.
I'll let the chief talk about what this is.
The number that was presented to you was, we worked it off of the program that we had before, and it's based on a 32-hour week CSO, so it is a part-time CSO with benefits. I think what you got to also remember when you put this program into place, and I'm not saying not to, or I'm not endorsing not, there's also support to that full-time or that part-time CSO out there working, so we have to increase the administrative support staff within the office. There's a lot of mailings that go out, a lot of contacts back and forth with the homeowners that came in, that they come in contact with. So it's just not the CSO that we have out on the street, it's the support staff behind that CSO that's included in the figure that you have there.
No, I understand that.
And Todd, I would ask you, now, is this 32 hours a week, is that year-round?
We ran the numbers based on year-round
Yeah.
support. It would be, it's not impossible, but it would be difficult to train a CSO.
Yeah.
CSOs are hard to retain. Most CSOs are people that want to get into law enforcement. It's going to be hard to retain a CSO and have them work for 4 months and then train them, get them up to speed of our system, our environmental health management system that we have in place, and then to lose them and then to bring another one back in. Could it be done? Yes, it could, but it would be a difficult task to do it on a seasonal basis.
Councilmember Sandal.
A couple questions. I have not gotten a lot of complaints from residents of late about neighborhood property issue problems, and I'm just wondering, do you have any observations? Does it seem to be better?
Well, I would agree with the city manager. Our response is gotten much quicker. We're 2 to 3 days out now on a complaint when we get it, where it used to be, could be anywhere from 2 weeks or more. So when we do get complaints, we're getting on top of them real quick. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm sorry, I didn't bring them on the exact number of citizen complaints versus what we proactively find with the CSOs out there. But if I recall, they're pretty balanced between what we receive in from a citizen and what a CSO is finding out there on their own.
Are more people turning them in, though? I mean,
Pardon
I'm
me?
getting calls that people are turning them in and they're seeing progress right away, which I can confer with what you're saying that you're turning around. But are you getting more people turning them in on the internet and calls?
I'm sorry, I'd have to do a historical check back, last couple of years, how quick. But we are getting a quicker turnaround, and we are doing, that one-time,
I see that.
action. So, and it's had positive results, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, there's some, and the mayor knows this because we've worked on 1 or 2 properties, I don't know how many times, but some people are just apparently slow learners on what it takes to to meet the standard of what the community expects for how their properties look. And, they get the one time, and then unfortunately, the next year, it's like you got to start the whole process all over again. But we get right on them and take care of them. I know I just dealt with one with Councilmember Elliott, and I think I got back to you within a couple of days. We were on them immediately, and they got three different citations to deal with, and that was within a matter of a few days. So, I think that the effect that we're having by being much quicker in dealing with properties and having no tolerance for people repeating has had its effect. Now, when you have a community where people are moving in and out of, and, if you've got 300 or 400 homes that turn over in a city like Richfield in a year, do you have new people each year that you've got to educate on the system? Yes. But I will say that I think that as more and more people become a part of and stay in this community and keep their properties up, the norm is to look down the street and everything I think looks pretty darn good. You still have the issue with vacant properties, but that program is still alive and well. We're monitoring the vacant properties, the foreclosed properties, pretty carefully, and we don't let them get looking very shabby at all before we go in and do the maintenance on them and then assess it to that property. So, one of the things I guess I would suggest is, make a judgment for yourself. I mean, every once in a while, what I do when I'm looking at something in the community or responding to something a council member has asked me, as I'm driving there, I intentionally drive slow and just look around. I look at the neighborhood I'm driving through, and I look at it and I say, is this the way I want this neighborhood to look? Is this the way I think the people who live there want it to look? And I can't, just anecdotally, it seems to me that most of those times I'm pretty pleased with how it looks. And then, every once in a while we'll come up to a house that I think I was out with, I don't know if it was you, Councilmember Rogie, or something. We saw it was a corner property. Maybe, I don't know if it was you that I was with, or.
I think so.
I don't know.
With you?
Every once in a while you see one or two, and when I do, I'm sitting there, I pull my car to the curb and I dial up my cell phone, and Todd and Betsy know the phone call comes in. I want somebody out there looking at that. And like Todd said, we're, back in the bad old days, the city reacted to something like that in about 2 weeks. Well, right now, it's 2 or 3 days, and we're there on top of it.
The problem we got, though, City Manager, is that this inspection program, taking in 1/3 of the houses every year, we were catching up to all this stuff a lot quicker. On Sunday, I was on 13th Avenue and visiting an old friend of mine, and he took me out in his backyard and said, how can I sell my house? Look at what's across from me. And there's I guess you could call it a garage in the backyard. I don't know if it was a playhouse that's the size of a garage or what it was, but it's ready to fall over on somebody. He doesn't want to call in, and his wife doesn't want to call in because he's going to get blamed for it regardless. And I haven't told you the address because I'm trying to figure out how to deal with that too, because he's going to get blamed regardless. But that house, if it had been inspected, you would never have allowed that to have happened. Matter of fact, I can't imagine, even if it's been 3 years since houses were inspected, that house ever got by in the first place.
Yeah.
So, and there's other ones like that, especially when you get off the main street, because I think we're getting more proactive than we were when I first got on this council.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, as a matter of fact, we were told that you were reactive and not proactive because of the amount of work. But there are a lot of things going on, especially when you get off the main drags. So, and this house on 12th Avenue is going to be a prime example. I'll probably, after this meeting's over, tell you the address. Well, I don't think I have it with me, but that's the kind of thing, I know. And the way I look at this is if this cost me $4 a year, what was it, $4.54 a year. $4.54 a year to know that somebody's house is going to get checked every 3 years so that we don't go back down into that rut that we got in. I don't look at the percentage number as much as can I afford $4.54 to maintain that inspection program, especially after all the work that the task force put in. I say that's a good bargain for us. That's my comment on it.
That's a balanced kind of decision you have to make. And the thing I worry about is, you have the obligation of the debt service that we've incurred. You're going to be looking at choices for debt service coming up in the next couple of years with some of the projects that you're looking at. And especially if you're going to do something with the county
working with the county on repairing and fixing 66th Street. And yeah, it's $4.54. But, $4.50 here, and then whatever you have to do for the next debt service, and all adds up, and that's what I'm afraid of. But, you've hit it on the head, Councilmember Rogie. I mean, if you want to have that kind of a program, this is what it costs, but you just have to take a look at that in light of the other obligations that we're going to be facing and what's important to residents. I don't know. You have to make that decision. You're elected to do it, but
Councilmember
you make the
Sandal
call.
has a comment.
Yeah, I just a question, I guess. I was under the impression that we may have had 2 CSOs working on this program when we started. Was that the case, or was it only one?
No, I think in the very beginning, when we kick-started it, we might have had 2, but I'm pretty sure most of it was done with 1.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that's what I needed to know. Thanks.
Just one comment.
Okay.
Mayor, at one time we were talked about on the task force about reserves and that, and I don't know if that's still a possibility, because I noted in the highlights that we were looking at having reserves write tickets for snow emergency and parking. I'm not sure if it would be that much harder to teach them how to report, houses that they see. And if they're out and about anyways, they have a need to feel like they're doing something, and that may be something we could train them to do.
It might be. And again, you know what it comes down to? It comes down to the difference between whether you're training reserves or whomever to drive down the streets and back and off the main thoroughfares as well, and see what meets your eye from the street. The tricky part is getting into the backyards.
Yeah.
That's what's very difficult. Now, in the point you just spoke of, Councilmember Rogie, that's the kind of thing, we're not going to catch probably, unless we had a program like that. But it's the kind of thing where, my gosh, I wish that when somebody looks out their backyard and sees that, they would give us a call so that we could deal with it. I know, and I know all the reasons why he doesn't want to do it, but I guess I've wasted enough breath on that one. But I'm just beating around a circle. You folks know exactly what I'm talking about.
2013 general fund budget, the proposed budgeted budget for general fund is $20,577,000. It's a 3.13% increase from the 2012 adopted and a 2.51 increase from the 2012 revised. Just looking at the general fund budget by department, you can see one decrease. The legislative executive department shows almost 3% decrease, and all the other departments do show moderate increases to a total increase of the 3.13% for 2013. If you're looking at budgeted revenues for the general fund as a comparison to 2012, you can see it's extremely comparable. Taxes 70% now versus 69 last year, and basically everything is pretty comparable. No real big changes. Looking back, 2003 comparison, you can see the differences in taxes and intergovernmental revenues, 70% versus 58% in 2003, and then 7% intergovernmental revenues versus 23% in 2003. So you can see the change, the shift that we've talked about before with the intergovernmental revenues and the LGA and the taxes and things. It was already in effect, really basic, starting in 2003. Proposed budgeted expenditures for the general fund, comparison 2013-2012. I did make changes here, but the numbers are all exactly the same from 12 to 13. There's no shift. I mean, the proportion hasn't changed at all between departments. If you look at the 3 major departments of the city, the 3 most visible departments, public safety, public works, and fire, they equate to 77% of the general fund budget, $15,839,000. If you compare that then to the total general fund tax levy, it's only $14,687,000. That's over $1 million difference between the two. So basically, the rest of the funding is coming from elsewhere within the general fund, intergovernmental revenues, charges for services, and things like that. But those 3 departments exceed the tax levy. Comparison, 10-year comparison expenditure, again, from 2003 to 2013, very comparable, really no changes. I mean, a percentage change in public safety and public works, and that's about it. Everything else is very comparable. Just looking at the general fund history, average increase from 2006 to 2013 is about a little less than 3%. Full-time regular personnel, you can see we had a peak of 230 employees, full-time employees in 2001. We're down to 195 in 2013. Who determines your property tax? State legislature, they establish the classes and the class rates. They determine the levels of state aid. They set the levy limits. County assessor will determine your market value and assign your property class. And then the taxing jurisdiction, the city in this case, will determine the levy amount based on their needs for the general fund. This is where the information I received yesterday really helped out. In calculating the tax levy and calculating the tax capacity and the tax capacity rate, we need certain information from the county and the assessor's office and things like that. And the big difference was the tax increment tax capacity values, which is always subtracted out and always affects the tax levy, had decreased from 2012 to 2013 by almost $1 million. I talked to Steve about that, and we're both under the impression that maybe they've already factored in the ILN, because that's what we were assuming is the ILN would be about $1 million effect on the tax capacity levels and stuff like that. So what that did is it changed the bottom portion here. If you look, the 2012 taxes, this is on $150,000 properties, $912. If you look at 2013 with no changes, everything's the same or everything like that, you'd see about a $48 increase. But now with the new tax capacity rate that I was able to calculate, and plus with the 7.4% market value decrease, which is what the city realized in the last assessable year that the county figured out, we would recognize about a $23 decrease in taxes for the city portion in 2013 based on that. Now, it's not to say everybody's going to have a 7.4% decrease, but there's going to be some kind of a market value decrease on properties, and hopefully they will realize a little bit of a decrease in spite of our tax levy increase.
I just want to, no, go ahead, Councilmember.
Could you,
I didn't see that.
I remember just reading something, it was yesterday or today, the land value we had in Richfield last year compared to this year, it went down again. All the cities apparently went down.
The market value, or?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
the market,
it's
yeah.
going to hit the people who had the least amount of loss in their property.
That's,
Right.
and that's
the way the article-
exactly the comment I was going to make. And when you have a situation like that where the assessor comes back and says that on average there is a 7.4% decrease in the estimated market value of the community, when we calculate this and make this example for folks to look at, if what happened to you was average, you would see about a $27 decrease in the city portion of your property tax. But what that means is exactly what you said, council member. If your house is one of the homes that didn't decrease, you will not see a decrease, you will see an increase. And conversely, if yours is a home where there was more than a 7% decrease in the market value, you'll see even a bigger decrease in the city portion. But like everything else, it's an arithmetic average, and most people are going to fall somewhere either above or below it. Yeah. So if it was purely on an arithmetic average, this is what would happen. And people, if your value is going down, you generally will see some kind of a decrease in the city taxes. If it stayed level or went up, you will see an increase.
Same effect occurs here with $175,000 property. Although the increase is a little bit more for no change in market value, $56 increase. However, if you do factor in the decrease, you're looking at about a $27 decrease. $200,000 property, you're looking at about a $64 increase versus a $31 decrease if there is a market value decrease in it. And I chuckle a little bit because when I did this 4 or 5 years ago, I was working with 275, 250, and 2 1/4. Now I'm looking at 150, 175, and 200. It's like I've had to drop these back down based on what the market values have done over the last several years. Just looking at monthly costs for services. City services based on $175,000 home, just on the graphics we just showed you. You can see what police, fire, community development, public works, recreation, and all the other general fund services cost a resident at $175,000 versus some other services that residents have choices on or don't have a choice on. And you can see they're fairly comparable. I mean, the city services match up well with those other services there and things like that. Moving on to the 2013 capital improvement budget. That budget right now is at $6.5 million. Some of the major projects included within that are the North Richfield Parkway and the Taft Lake improvements. Again, the replacement of the rolling stock and the IT equipment, and then the various recreation projects and some of the loan repays are also included in there. Also, there's utility improvements in there. There's some improvements for the liquor operations and things like that. Within the rolling stock equipment, as I stated earlier, total cost or total funding is $700,000, and that's funding through a general tax levy. Included in that are some of the pieces of equipment to purchase. Is a new dump truck. There's 3 police squads. There's a log truck chassis, and don't ask me what that is because I don't know what it is, but it's something for Public Works. I'm sure Mike could elaborate on that. There's 2 CSO vehicles, and then there's also computer network infrastructure and equipment. And that brings me to the end of my slides. It's, where are we going? And I've said this last several years, we need to continue to develop a long-term strategy for economic independence, which includes ending our dependence on LGA. We need to continue our financial strategy planning, maintain our current level of quality service, and if we do increase our service levels, there needs to be an offsetting increase in revenues to offset those, and contain our operating costs within our control.
Can I just follow up with a couple of questions? And this was one I actually asked you beforehand, so we can re-answer this. And this is in regards to our LGA. I know that we are decreasing the amount of LGA we put in the budget, but it's not very much, and you did explain that to me earlier. Would you explain that again?
Yeah, I had it originally down at $300,000, which I think I had when we did the key financial strategy planning, yes. But I bumped it back up to $400 because I was trying to manipulate the levy to keep the levy down and things like that, and that's why I did it. I mean, I can, if the council would like me, I can reduce that, but it would affect the tax levy upwards and things like that. That's why I did what I did. I was trying to keep the levy low.
But we still, in a couple of years, think that we've.
I'm hoping next year I can cut it more than $19,000.
Okay. Because I think we're all kind of wondering how shaky things are going to come and what's going to happen the next couple of years.
Well, I mean, with the estimated deficit for the state, that's looming out there, and I don't know how they're going to deal with that. So I suppose the election. That brings
me to another question. I know that as I was testifying on local government aid and trying to protect what I could of that for the city of Richfield, I know that city manager was going to meetings regarding physical disparities, which we also get. How much physical disparities do we get in a percentage? I mean, what do we get?
I'll let Chris respond to that. He probably has it more handy than I do. It's well over $1 million.
If I'm correct, I think it's about $3 million, but for 2013.
Is it that much?
Yeah, last year was
so that's pretty
about 2.7, 2.8.
For those people, again, watching at home, Fiscal Disparities is a program that dates back to the early 1970s, part of the original, one of the frameworks of the original Minnesota Miracle, as they called it. But Fiscal Disparities is a pretty unique program where it looks at the financial and structural health of a region rather than city by city. And so it says that a percentage, and just to make it simple, that where new construction occurs in a city, 40% of that is contributed to a pool that's administered metro-wide. And then at the end of the fiscal accounting period, the money is distributed back to all the cities in that metro area on a needs basis. And so cities that have a lot of commercial industrial growth, let's take our neighbor to the south, Bloomington, they would contribute more money than they get back. And that's true of Eden Prairie, that's true of like Maple Grove, that's true of Egan, it's true of Plymouth. And then there are cities that get more out of the program than they put in. The biggest gainer in the metro area is Brooklyn Park. And then there are some others. For some reason, Andover is a huge gainer, but Richfield is as well. Richfield's a huge gainer in that program. And so there have been 2 bills that have been introduced in the legislature last year, one by Ann Linchesky, representative from Bloomington, and another by the representative from Eden Prairie. And as you can imagine, both of those bills were to do a study on fiscal disparities to, I'm sure, to address the concerns that those cities would have with the program. And I was part of a discussion group that's made a recommendation to the Association of Metropolitan Municipalities on their stance for policy. And we're basically, what came out of that group is if if there's any changes in the fiscal disparity program, it's got to be part of an overall, overarching strategy on property taxes and government aids. Because there's a lot of cities in the metro area where when you look at fiscal disparities, because fiscal disparities, it pays out to, I mean, it affects the school district, the county, and the city. But there are in some areas where a city comes out a winner or a loser with fiscal disparities, and the county comes out just the opposite, or the school district comes out just the opposite. It's very complicated. And if they changed or got rid of the system, the studies so far would show that most cities in the metro area would suffer from that, and we would be one of them. I mean, it would be like starting all over and losing local government aid, because again, when you looked at one of the key slides that Mr. Regis put up, when public works, fire, and public safety are $1 million more than our whole property tax levy, and you start depending on like $3 million coming from a metro-wide pool to help us with our local expenses, you can see how important that program is. I don't think that there's going to be a significant change in that program for the year in the next legislative year. I know they're looking at it. So it's something that's very, very important, and especially for Richfield, when we now basically have one legislator that represents Richfield exclusively. And and we're part of a Senate district where, part of the Senate district includes Bloomington, which is on the flip side of fiscal disparities from Richfield. Very complex issue.
Yes, and I'll be talking to our representatives about that in the future as well as we
look
at this. But I just have some concerns because we just went through this with LGA and have decided, to wean ourselves off of it. I think that was a great idea, but on a very painful one. It would be sad to see that if we have to go through something like this.
Well, I mean, it would be very, very difficult for a city like Richfield, after we're trying to get ourselves off of local government aid, again, to take a look at embarking on a program just as massive again to get ourselves off of. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know. That's my questions. Council, anything else for Mr. Regis while he's here?
No.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So we'll start the department now. I'll have Chris do the slides, but I think I'll just stay in my position here as we go through. I'll do legislative executive highlights. The legislative executive departments consist of the mayor, council, other agencies, city manager, legal, and boards and commissions. And when you saw the overall piece on this, you saw that the overall legislative executive department went down by about 3%, and there's a reason why. Let's look at this first. We have mayor and council, again, and that shows a slight increase. We have other agencies, which includes contributions that we have to social service agencies. I'm going to talk about that more in a few minutes, but let's just look at that, going from 100,000 to 70,000. Over the past several years, I've been very concerned about the money that we've been contributing each year to the Hennepin South Services Collaborative.
That's the memo. I have this.
HSSC.
Yeah, what you sent us. Yeah.
And so I had been bringing that up. We were one of the 3 cities on that comprised that agency, and about 6 months ago, myself and Mark Bernhardson from the city of Bloomington basically. I had announced to the board that I was going to be recommending to our city council that we cut our contribution. A couple years ago, I said that I would be recommending to our city council that we freeze our contribution, and the other 2 cities followed. When I brought it up again this time, Mark Bernhardson from Bloomington agreed and jumped in and basically said, well, maybe we should just take a look at whether we contribute at all. And I said, it's fine with me, because that's really where I'm going. So that started a process in place where we eliminated all the contributions to HSSC from the cities. And really the planning that we were getting from that organization was nil. And there was no need to have an administrator there. What's left of HSSC really is administering what's called LCTS, or Local Collaborative Time Study money from the federal government that goes directly to school districts. And so the school districts are taking over the administration of that organization. And that's one of the main reasons that we see the huge drop in other agencies that you're looking at so far. City manager, it goes, there's a increase in there. Legal, there's a slight increase. Boards and commissions, a slight increase, and then overall, there's a decrease for the department. And again, if you graph that out, you can see that the legislative executive has been relatively flat for about the last 5 years. City council, what are the highlights? Well, we monitored state budget, Minnesota budget issues, and the impact on the city, and we've been dealing with that as a council and staff for the last several years. We started research into proceeding with paperless electronic agenda packets, and that's something that I want to see continued and look at, and hopefully we can begin in 2013. It would be another cost savings for the city to be able to go to that. Human services and other agencies. I talked about HSSC being reorganized and downsized, and now we come to the 10-ton elephant in the middle of the room. The $70,000 that was just left, and if you want to pull that, can you pull that slide back, Chris, and go backwards? You see that in this budget, there's $70,480 that is targeted for other agencies. Now, that's been something the city has historically done since about 1991. And some of the agencies that received that money, and you can probably maybe fill in, I mean, there's Storefront is one of them, Veep is another, is Mira another?
Yeah, I think that's in there. There's a couple transportation agencies in there.
Okay,
yeah.
so what happened is during the most recent, in the audit, what happens when an auditor goes through a city to audit is they'll go through and just start saying, I want that file and that file and that file, and bring it to me. And then they go through the selected expenditures. One of the selected expenditures that they looked at was one of the payments we made from the other agencies to one of those agencies. They came to Chris first and said, we don't see any authority for you to be able to do that. And Chris talked to me about it, and I said, really? And so we went back and talked to the auditor and said, are you sure the city's been doing this for, over 20 years? And they said, nope, we don't think so. In fact, we're going to have to write it up as a finding. So I asked the city attorney immediately to research it and give me a memo back and tell me what she thought about it. And I've given you copies of that.
Yeah.
And the city attorney came back and said, yep, Steve, the auditors are right. You don't have statutory authority or charter authority to make those payments. And so we made those payments this year because they generally are made in the beginning of the year, and we hadn't had that finding until after the payments were made.
Yeah, checks went out the week they told me about it.
Yeah. So we're going to get written up again for doing that for a second year in a row, and it'll be a finding. I mean, we can't go back, I don't think, and ask for the money back at this point in time. Because there is no statutory authority to do that, and I think if you've all had a chance to read the memo the city attorney put together, it's pretty clear as to what we can do and can't do. I'm saying it was too late at this point in time before we got all the information together and decide what to do to pull it out of the budget. But I guess what I'm saying is before we get to adopting a final levy in December, I'm saying that $70,000 needs to come out of the budget. Because I wouldn't sit here and recommend to you that we make those payments. I wouldn't feel comfortable signing off on payments when I know that it's something that there's no legal authority to make. Now, having said that, well, when you look at the whole issue of the CSO thing, when you adopt your preliminary levy, I suppose one way of looking at it is adopt the preliminary levy just the way it stands with the $70,000 sitting in there. And then you have several months to decide whether you want to use some portion of that money, maybe all $59,000 to pay for that CSO position, and then reduce the levy by what's left over. Or you can do a preliminary levy in some other fashion. But I guess at this point in time, I would adopt the preliminary levy next Tuesday, including the $70,000, knowing full well that I'm recommending that that money not be spent for other agencies, and that if you're not going to spend it for something else, that it be cut out of the final levy in December.
So there's no way we can help other agencies like this?
Well, you can see, it's pretty risky and pretty limited to do. The only thing you can really do, I guess, is we could make a payment to Veep Food Shelves, if some money to them, if the money was exclusively used for food shelves. It can't be used for anything else.
I see, and that's hard to, even for them to do. Have we informed the agents?
No, we haven't, because and that's the next thing I was going to say. I didn't want to say anything until I had the opportunity to say this to the city council. And
So I'm looking at some of these organizations are great organizations that really help the community.
Right, they
And
do.
this is gonna, some of these, the amounts that we give them, it's gonna really hurt them,
And my
programming.
my recommendation right now would be, look, it seems to me it's pretty clear we can't give this money. I think that we should send letters to these agencies saying what the finding was,
away.
that we've been written up for it. We'll be written up again for 2012, and we're not going to be in a position to make the contributions for 2013. That's where I'm coming from.
Council member.
I got two questions, I guess. Is it only because the auditor had never done this before? Or is there some liability on the auditors to have caught this before? If you've been doing this for 20 years, you would think that by now we would have found out about it. That would be one question. And then the second one would be is, if we know we're doing something wrong, why can't we ask for at least part of that money back? Because that's the taxpayers' money. I don't get it. If we know we're doing something we're not allowed by law to do, why
Well-
we would just look the other way.
Well, I don't think we've looked the other way. I mean, the money was sent, the money's been sent, and the money's probably been spent, and for the organizations to find that money to give it back to us may be difficult. I guess that's a question I'd have to pose to the city attorney, Councilman. But I'll let Mr. Regis answer the first part of it.
I asked the very same question. I said, we've been doing this since I've been here. I said, why have you never said anything before to me about it? And they, well, and what they do is, they do what they call compliance checks. They do run a random sample and say, okay, I want all these checks here, like Steve said, so we pull all the checks and the invoices and give it to them, and one of them they picked this year happened to be one of those payments, and it's just, just odds that they've never selected it in the previous, 20 years or whatever like that. So they selected it, they came and questioned me about it, and I said, well, we've been doing this for 20 years, and they said, well, it's illegal. You have no statutory authority to do it. It's not a public purpose expenditure and things like that, and that's what brought us to our present conversation. But that's what happened. It was just a random, if they wouldn't have selected that check number, we wouldn't be having this discussion. We'd still be doing it.
Plus, I should add, for people to know, we change auditors periodically. There's probably at least 3, maybe 4 different audit firms,
I've had 3 since I've been here.
yeah, that have audited us while we were doing this. So that's just the way it is. I mean, the way they do it is they pull certain they'll just go through and randomly pull check numbers. That's how they do that kind of an audit.
Well, I guess my concern is that if it's because it was just by accident they found it, that's one thing. And I can understand with all the counting they have to do. I can understand that. But what I don't get is, if we know we've done something wrong, if I get a check from the IRS at the end of the year that's too much, they're going to come back. They'll come back if it's 20 years from now and say they want the money back. They're not, if you, in everything in business, if you get a deal and they find out about it, they're going to come and ask you for the money. That's what bothers me, is that just because it's government, I don't understand why we shouldn't at least be contacting these groups and saying, we've given you money illegally, and therefore we need to get at least a part of it back for whatever the rest of the year is. Maybe 1/4 of it. But
Well,
Can I, Councilmember Sandals Petter?
I guess my thinking is, the state has promised us year after year, we're going to give you 2 million or
Yeah.
3 million LGA, and then they turn around and don't. And I don't know that I would use the word illegal as much as inappropriate. We now have discovered we shouldn't have done it, and we aren't going to continue. But those groups were promised money, they were given money, they allocated their budgets, they spent the money, they don't have the money.
Yeah.
I think it's very bad practice for us now to turn around and say, cough it up, we made a mistake, and you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't recommend that.
it's not that we made a mistake, it's that it was illegally given.
Well,
It was a
that's-
That's
mistake.
on-
By
But that's
mistake.
on us, that's on us, Fred. And
Yeah.
my point is if there was something other than a write-out, my understanding, there's no sanction, there's no fine. If there was a sanction or additional monies that we had to commit to the state or pay for this, I would maybe have a different light on this and ask for some assistance in getting the money back. These volunteer organizations didn't do anything wrong. We gave them the money, and absent some sanction that we have to repay or commit to, I'm not for asking them for any money back.
So the state doesn't require us to ask for it back?
It's just an audit finding as part of their special purpose report, their single audit reporting and things like that. It's an internal control finding and things like that they say, okay, we found this in what you're doing. You shouldn't do this anymore. You should change it and things like that.
What if you choose not to change your mind and you keep doing it then?
Well, you could if you, and that's one of the reasons I didn't pull it out of the budget. I mean, city council, you could sit there and say, well, you know what, we're still going to do it. Now,
Well, that's inappropriate.
well, any taxpayer could challenge you then
Right.
and take you to court and say you don't have the authority to spend that money for that. But
Did I hear you say, though, that part of the problem is there's no statutory authority, but we could charter it, or change the charter, or amend the charter?
well, no, I said there's nothing in the charter right now that allows it either. I think
Well, the implication is we could put something
I don't know
there.
that you could.
No.
I don't know that you could, because the state statute's pretty clear that you can't use this kind of money for those kind of expenditures. I don't think you could, council member.
All right, I mean,
Yeah.
But I also, I don't want to say, and maybe it's sparring words. I don't think the city did anything illegal. We simply didn't have the authority, the authority to spend the money for that. Now, it was authorized by a city council after due public hearing and everything else that we did. The authority doesn't exist to do it. I'll ask the city attorney if there's anything else we need to do, and I'll report back to the city council.
Okay.
But needless to say, I'm saying,
Yeah.
obviously, we don't want to be doing this anymore.
Exactly.
Legislative executive negotiated a 10-year cable franchise agreement. That took a lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears.
And a lot of aftermath yet.
Oh, right. Provided options to ensure most cost-effective, efficient services, conducted a successful grand opening of the new municipal center, provided significant technology upgrades to this center, and it's still being done. For example, the next time we have a closed session, we'd be using the Babcock room, and it's been completely refitted with the kind of technology that we would have for any kind of closed meeting, or for training sessions. We could have internet training sessions. It's set up to do just about anything that you could do in 2012 technology right here in our city facilities. And going back to the 10-year cable franchise agreement, part of what we negotiated in there is part of that money that's coming back to us now with the new franchise is to allow us to pay for that kind of equipment and reimburse ourselves for that kind of equipment. So.
And I'm happy to see that I can now count 7 monitors up here.
And we got the extra monitors up?
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, participated in Fairview Southdale Community Health Steering Committee. I'm on that committee with some board members of Fairview Southdale and looking at, again, community health steering. And we've been a very active participant in the Blue Cross Blue Shield Dewtown pilot program. Legal highlights, I think we've got excellent representation on city-by-city legal firms, both in our city attorney and our city prosecutor. Prosecution costs are maintained. Mr. Costello gives us just an extraordinarily good rate for the prosecutions that he does, and does just an excellent job. I can't say enough about Martin Costello. Basic legal costs reflect a very moderate increase, and again, Kennedy and Graven is also very good about keeping their costs down, and that mostly at the end of the year, we typically have money left over in the legal budget because we haven't spent all that we might have been charged, and we return that money to the general fund. Boards, commissions, and organizations. Really what this is mostly the dues that we have to pay. League of Minnesota Cities dues, that just came around, isn't that around $20,000 or $21,000 belong to the League of Cities? We belong to AMM, or Metropolitan Cities. We also belong to I-494 and 35W organizations. Those are very worthwhile. Those also are having an increase in fees. I think isn't that correct, Councilmember Sandal?
Just I-494.
Just I-494. And then there's some minimal funds available for board and commission activities. The things that this city belongs to are things that there's good payback for. Belonging to the League of Cities and Metro Cities and 494 35W, those are all, I think those are all important and pay dividends back to the city. And that's it for those 5 departments. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll go over to Administrative Services.
Administrative Services Department consists of 5 divisions: the Administrative Division, HR Division, Finance, City Clerk, and Assessing. The increase from 2012 to 2013 is about 2.5. I think it's actually 2.49%. The bulk of the increases are in City Clerk and Assessing. The Assessing increase is due to the city assessing contract with Hennepin County has increased again, and then also City Clerk, I think, is adding an additional intermittent employee to provide flexibility for working the front desk there here in City Hall. You can see just a graphic of the expenditure history. It's fairly flat, a little bit of an uptick in 2013 there. Revenue history, which is kind of up and down, but it's kind of leveling off now, and that's primarily from the City Clerk Division with the Deputy Registrar portion of the City Clerk, and also the passports and things that they provide there. Just a comparison here, the revenues and expenditures. Expenditures are in the red and the revenues are in green there. You can see the gap between them. Some of the budget highlights: administration launched a redesigned city website. That was just launched, here in August, or last August it just launched. Continue to produce local government programming, continue the promotion of employee wellness, and then we issued a new health insurance carrier in 2012, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Finance, we continue to strive to receive the GFOA budget and CAFRA awards, working towards eliminating our state aid dependence, maintain the city's AA+ bond rating with S&P that was just reaffirmed with our last bond issues, and also continue the key financial strategy planning.
Chris, question. Could I just ask a question on the website? It was nice to see the new one, but as we talked about environmental health, it took me, I think, 4 clicks to find environmental health. Is there any way that we could get that on the front web page or something so that people who are going to make the effort to call in things can find it right away?
Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
Actually, I didn't find it. My wife had to find it. I couldn't find it.
Well, those are good.
I think it was 4 clicks before you get to it, because you got to go to,
Departments.
well, you got to go somewhere, and then you got to go to public safety.
And you got to know to go to public safety, which a lot of people would.
Right, nobody would, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
and maybe you don't
those are
want to
good
call it
comments.
Environmental services, maybe you want to go just report
Property maintenance
Property maintenance,
calls or
yeah.
something
Yep.
like that?
Property
Something that
maintenance
makes it
issues.
obvious.
Yeah,
You bet.
the link.
Okay,
Good
thanks.
idea. Good idea.
Thanks for pointing it out.
Human Resources, in 2012, or actually probably 2011, but now again in 2012, they initiated an online benefits open enrollment program where employees actually go online to select their open enrollment options and things like that. Successful contract negotiations with all labor groups, increased the employee participation in the high deductible health plan, which helps keep premium costs down, and also coordinated supervisory evaluation and customer service training for employees. Risk management, minimal property casualty rate increases for 2013, and there was a slight decrease in the base workers' compensation rates for 2013. City Clerk established procedures for the vacant property tracking, increased licensing and passport revenue in 2012, 2013. They averaged 55,000 plus motor vehicle transactions annually, had a 99.9% accuracy rating by state. I think they've always had a 99.9%. I had Nancy review this again, and she says, yep, that's still current. So they do very well with what they do. Administer the 2012 primary and general election, and then continue to establish the electronic record retrieval system.
Licensing and passport, and I'm just wondering what that decrease stems
Well, the
from.
license and permits is within the Community Development Inspections Division and also business licensing. This is not part of that. It's a separate revenue. It's included like in the administrative services revenues. I can go back and I've got it's not in the same area. It's in different. It's
Other licensing.
Yeah,
That's
it's-
not the same.
Different department.
yeah, it's a different department is where it's
Okay,
included
yeah, if you
at.
can, John, because I noticed that and I was going to ask about it earlier.
You're talking about
Yeah, the licensing, council members, The licensing and permit decreases, and I don't remember what the time frame was.
2%, whatever it was.
Yep, and that's a factor of, I think that was over a 5-year period. I can't, was it last year or was it? At any rate, it's a function of how many people are doing construction, how many people are
All right,
going out
so
there
it's
and
a
pulling
building
permits.
permits.
Building permits,
All right.
yep.
Assessing, staffed by one city clerical employee. Major cost is the assessing contract. Hennepin County does all the assessing work here in the city. And the contract is at $250,000 for 2013. And what the assessors are spending a lot of time on lately is just educating the public on the homestead market value exclusion and things like that. Information Technologies is basically a separate fund, but it falls under the umbrella of the Administrative Services Department. And basically, they handle all of the information technology within the city. And they completed the IT transition to this building from the old one, which took them a lot of time. They completed operating system and office software upgrades. They're going to complete the build out of the fiber optic infrastructure. I know a couple of liquor stores are going to get hooked up to that. And then they're also continuing the implementation of the digital record system. And I think that's all for administrative services. Yep. Any questions or anything?
On the assessors, I know that we sometimes look at what we pay for outside services and decide to bring them back in because they're cheaper. Have we decided to look at this in the future yet? Or is it to that point?
No, we do take a look at that periodically. Right now, I still think that it's better, more cost-effective for us to buy the service from Hennepin County. But that's something that I think, because each year we take a look at what services we contract and which we provide in service here. That's something we should take a look at for 13 and 14 to see what it would take to staff again internally.
Yeah, I just wonder.
I know with that Bloomington contract, it was cheaper to go ahead and hire our own person for the inspection, but in that case, it was one of those things where, all I can think of was Bloomington really didn't want to do it for us anymore because they wanted to charge us so much.
Question. Do we have the capability yet to pay your water bills online? Is that something that we're looking at?
They're working on that. I know we're working on that.
That's
I don't
actually
know.
one of the
I don't know
goals
where
in
it's at right now, but I know they are working on it. I don't know what the status is.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, yeah, but you do it through your bank, not through them, through the city. No, yeah.
I can look into that. I don't.
Yeah, that's one of the goals on the.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
You read this.
I'm pretty sure we're working on it. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure.
It'd be nice.
I hate to put the post office out of business, but
Well, you can drop it here.
Ease the parking.
I do it out of my bill pay too, so.
All right.
Okay, then we move on. Public safety.
Thanks. Madam Mayor and council members, here to present to you the 2012-2013 budget for public safety. As you well know, we have 3 divisions within public safety: support services, police services, and emergency services. From our 2012 to 2013, we're realizing about a 3.74% increase. The next slide here will show you a graph of the increases we've experienced over the last 5 years. It's been about the same the last 5 years. We've had a very active year in the police department this year, as you're well aware. We promoted our first police cadet to the position of police officer. And since the first of the year, we have hired 4 new officers. We've increased our staffing from 44 to 45 licensed officers, and that increase comes to us from the Department of Justice grant that we were awarded late last year under the COPS hiring grant, which pays for the salary and benefits for that additional officer for 3 years. New public safety director in place. We have then recently promoted a new deputy director and a police sergeant. We anticipate promoting another police cadet before the end of the year to the position of police officer. At that time, when that cadet gets promoted, which should come in October, we will be at full staff then at 45 licensed officers. And then, of course, in May, I introduced to you our 2 new police canines who are now working the street since June. Once again, I'm happy to report our crime trends are going down. Part 1 crimes are your misdemeanor, lesser offense crimes, minor vandalisms, thefts. We've noticed a trend down for about the last 6 years. This year's decrease in the Part 1 crimes, not as much as we would like to see, but nevertheless, it was still a decrease, and it's still a good trend to be going down. Part 2 crimes, the next graph you see here, Part 2 crimes are your more serious crimes, your felony level crimes. These would be more your robberies, burglaries, crimes against persons. Once again, about the last 4 to 5 years, we've been trending down in the reported crimes in that area. Here we had a more significant drop in the trend down. Sure.
It seems counterintuitive that we're in a bad economy for 3 or 4 years, and that the
does.
crimes are going down.
I know.
Is there a different way of doing the statistics, or is it really the same method as in the past? Because it just seems like you would have more problems, not less.
Right.
And it has been, in the past, that has been they've actually gone up. But
Yeah.
yes, I've asked that question already.
Yes. A lot of people are scratching their heads and asking the same question. The answer to the first part of your question is no, we don't. We report, the FBI in the state of Minnesota, we report on their standards. There has not been a significant change that would reflect these kinds of trends. Every year we do get some minor changes in what we report, but nothing that would reflect this. The crime trends in violent crime, especially when you talk to Part 2 crimes, they're down all around the country. I mean, there are a few places, I think recently I heard Chicago's having a spike, but Minneapolis is trending down, state of Minnesota's trending down. You have a lot of smart people scratching their heads, not coming up with the answer. I'd like to tell you a lot for the Richfield Police Department is we have, in the last few years, been out there proactively doing a lot of work in crime prevention. Our joint community policing project, which you're aware of, does wonders as far as connecting us with the community and what we're doing out there. So, but I can't take all the credit for it. I'd like to. I really just don't have an answer for you.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe
Support
it's
Services Division, that's our environmental health. They continue the review and update the code. They're actively involved in the Blue Cross Blue Shield Stewtown activities. Identifying new software options for our business licensing function. They're constantly doing enhancements on our environmental health management system. And they will continue monitoring the vacant foreclosed properties for maintenance issues. That'll continue again well into 13. Emergency Services Division, these are our police reserves. These are our volunteer citizens. These are really our unsung heroes of the department. They provide such an added resource to the department, and they are a small portion of our budget, but they need to be recognized. They provide traffic control and security at our community events. We see them out there the 4th of July. We see them out there at the half marathon. And this year, being it's an election year, a major election year, they're a critical part to our VIP protection for motorcades. We get stretched real thin. It's pretty hard for a VIP to come into the metropolitan area without coming through Richfield. And these reserves come out there. We call them to come out there. They've been out there at least 2 or 3 times already this year, and we anticipate they'll be activated a lot more as we get closer to the election. Of course, it all depends on whether Minnesota becomes a battleground state, so to say. But they have been recognized by the Secret Service for the work they do with our officers. So, and we don't value election years for the amount that we have to tap them to come out and help us. The rest of our budget goes toward maintenance of our emergency sirens around town. Had to replace a couple motors last year. They just burn out after time. And then for our police reserves, equipment and uniforms. And the remainder of that budget goes towards compensation for the reserve coordinator. And then finally, I just want to show you what you're going to start seeing on the street pretty soon is our new squad cars. After 20-some years of the Crown Vic being the staple of the probably 80% of police departments, Ford decided to retire that from service. So we are now, that what you have on the screen there in front of you is the new Ford version called the Interceptor. We are going to be receiving, well, we have them here, they're just not in service yet. And with the new model, we went with a new graphic on the squad car. We will also be test driving testing out the Chevrolet version, which is the Caprice. From a distance, they probably look about the same, the body style, but the Caprice will have the same graphics that you see on this one here. But with that being said, these should be starting, you'll start seeing these on the street probably late September or early October. But you'll see the Crown Vics because we're on a 3-year rollover on our squads. So all the Crown Vics that we got in last year will still be out on the street for a couple more years. So it'll be a few years before you'll see our whole fleet this way. Yes, sir.
Todd, I'm just curious, will these cars get better gas mileage than the Crown Vics did, or are they about the same?
They claim to,
Yeah.
but, you know.
You gotta have a supercharged engine to go on car chases and stuff. You
Well,
don't get these aren't low horsepower.
Yeah, we're getting the cars in late this year because of this, the Crown Vics being retired and Ford wasn't able to produce the number of requests they had for vehicles. The picture you have there is obviously not even fully equipped with our light bars or our push bumpers and that. That's because they're so far behind on getting equipment for these cars. So we're hoping City Garage is saying probably by the 1st of October we'll start getting these out on the road. So
Is this easy to get in and out of when you got bulletproof vests on and stuff? That with that slope on the windshield, I would suspect that people are hitting their foreheads trying to get in.
you know, I had an opportunity. Well, I've obviously before we got these, I had an opportunity at the Minnesota Chiefs Convention to get in and out, and as you can see, I'm a rather large person. They are surprisingly easy and roomy inside. They look smaller body style than the Crown Vic, but the way they're designed inside, even our larger officers will have no problem with these squads. Ford did a lot of research, and so did Chevrolet, on testing and designing these for officers. And the amount of equipment we put in a squad car, and you all have seen it, with the computers and the video cameras and the radars, they were designed to accommodate that equipment. So,
Councilmember.
I think these are all-wheel drive, so they should be a little better in the winter, right?
the Ford version does offer all-wheel drive. The Chevrolet does not.
Oh.
So
Depends on what year we have, right? Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, council members, I'm here to present the fire department budget for 2013. As you're probably aware, our motto in the fire department is prevent harm, stay safe, and attempt to exceed expectations at all times. 2012 highlights, we filled the vacant assistant fire chief position, which has been open since I was promoted a year ago. We conducted a Station 2 needs assessment and scoping exercise for the renovation of Station 2. We enhanced our training opportunities. One of the things we did was we put 2 new fire investigators on staff. We used existing firefighters and ran them through state training. We had to do that because of retirements. And one of the nice things was we were able to use the municipal center to host classes for the training, and we were able to save several $1,000s in overtime and travel costs by hosting those classes here. We also received a grant. We were able to put 4 firefighters through CPR training, instructor training, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We're in the process of going through Blue Card Incident Command certification. Almost the entire department's going through that. It's a 74-hour class, and it's the only nationally recognized incident command training system for Type 4 and 5 incidents, which are local incidents. If you take a look at the budget, we're at 2.4% increase over the 2012 revised, 2.1% in personnel, which is the vast majority of our costs in the fire department. Operating is about 4.2%, I believe. So overall, it's a 2.4 increase. The reason the operating is a little bit higher is there's increased fees for us in some of the items the new municipal center, we have more space, cost of fuel and things like that are in interdepartmental transfers. 2011, we had record call volume, and we're on a pace to exceed that. We're at 3,900, approximately 3,900 runs. Of that, about 72% are emergency medical calls, and this year we're up 23% on severe medical calls, cardiac and respiratory. Our cardiac arrest rate right now is, well, the actual incidence is up. If it continues, we'll be up 45% over last year. So we're seeing a lot more cardiac arrests. But one of the big keys to that is that we're seeing much better survival. I can't break out Richfield statistics because fortunately there's not enough to be statistically significant. But overall, cardiac survival in Hennepin County, you have a 63% better chance of surviving a cardiac arrest in Hennepin County than you do anywhere else in the country. You have a 42% chance of surviving with bystander CPR. And that brings us to our hands-only CPR program. We're partnering with a number of agencies, including Hennepin County EMS, Edina, Bloomington, Minnetonka, St. Louis Park, St. Anthony, Eden Prairie, Hopkins, pretty much the entire Southwest Metro. All the fire departments have gotten together, and we're going to be offering a lot of hands-only CPR. What they found is that bystander CPR is one of the new critical links in survival. So you're going to start seeing firefighters out teaching hands-only CPR, and it's a 20-minute class. No longer do you need to go through the whole 4 hours to learn how to do CPR. You don't have to do mouth-to-mouth. You don't have to do mouth-to-mask. It's just teaching you how to do compressions. And we're going to try and increase that survival rate with bystander CPR. We've partnered with crime prevention in the police department to develop home alone seminars that have been given several times throughout the year on non-school days. And they're targeted at kids that are, maybe 5th grade through 6th, 7th grade. It's their first time. They're kind of latchkey kids. And it teaches them how to be safe at home, how to do some basic cooking, kitchen safety, fire safety, and what to look out for, and how to maintain and be safe, especially when you got families with 2 working adults. You can see one of our firefighters at the class there. And that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Yeah, about the CPR, will we be giving those, will we advertise CPR classes here for this?
Yeah, one of the goals of the program is by partnering, you'll be able to go pick a night and there'll be CPR, hands-only CPR anywhere in the Southwest Metro for a few months.
Because I'm certified now, but I would like to do the hands-on.
Yeah, it's really simple. It's get your hands on the chest and do those compressions.
The same thing I've learned for years and years from my card, right? But
Yep,
just hands
exactly.
down.
But what they found is that you don't have to do the whole 15-2
Yeah.
and 30 and
Yep.
2 and trying to remember it, and it keeps changing.
Yes.
Get on there and start doing those compressions.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. It's great.
Mayor, members,
Excuse me, can I?
I just wanted to add one quick thing, and that is one of the focuses that Wayne has brought to the fire department is a heavy investment in training, and more training. And so we're going to be doing a lot of training with our firefighters, and we hope to do a lot of training. I know that one of Wayne's goals is to get more of that training and firefighters out into our community.
Yep.
And I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but that's another.
That's exciting.
We've been able to partner with CD and take advantage of some of the homes that for the Richfield redeveloped, do training out in the homes so that people see us doing some of that kind of training. You're going to see more community outreach over the next year to 2 with some additional programs trying to teach people. We're trying to prevent the problem before you see the lower left-hand corner. That's what we want to try to avoid.
Yeah, agreed. Councilman.
Just a question, a lot of calls must have come out this last week where you have 2 trucks going down 70th?
It was a very busy weekend for the fire department.
When you get 2 though, what does that mean? It's not a heart attack or anything, right?
If we're at minimum staffing, we'll send 2 rigs on a cardiac arrest or a suspected cardiac arrest, a person down or one not breathing. Otherwise, it could be a fire call. We send all the Richfield rigs on any fire call or fire alarm. We had, in Richfield, we had 3 structure fires over the weekend, and we also went to Eden Prairie on a structural collapse on Saturday. Wow. So it was a very busy weekend for us.
Wow.
So.
Thanks.
Thank you. pages of stuff. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. For community development, just a little bit about who we are. We currently have 19 employees, 16 full-time and 3 part-time. This is in 3 divisions. Planning and zoning, which is it's 1.75 full-time equivalent employees. Really, that's the city planner, a portion of my time, and a secretary, a portion of a secretary's time. Inspections is 8 employees, and then housing and redevelopment is almost 8 full-time employees. You'll see here, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a second, there's a new planning employee proposed. The housing and redevelopment division is funded entirely by the Richfield HRA. We provided them with a similar presentation, what you're seeing now, on the HRA budget in August. And if anybody wants more information on that, I can get it to them. The proposed budget for the city portion is a little over $1 million, 1.194 million, which is a 6.5% increase over the 2012 revised. That's much higher than we were aiming for. So the reason for that increase is this new employee, as I'd said, this new employee really is replacing 2 employees that were lost, in some of the budget cuts that were done because of LGA. 75% of their time would be a city expense under the planning and zoning division, and the HRA would be picking up the other 25%. What this employee would be doing, a lot of the code enforcement that you're talking about is done by CSOs and is done by environmental health, but a lot of it is also done through the planning division, particularly when there are code violations on a commercial property. On the residential properties, those are pretty cut and dried for the CSOs. Anytime there's violations on a commercial property, is not so simple. They've got to figure out what the rules of the planned unit development might be, what the conditional use permit said in terms of landscaping or where they can and can't park cars. So a lot of what this would be doing is code enforcement. They'd also be working, assisting the city planner. There's no secondary coverage for that person, so when they're gone, things don't get done like we'd like them to see. But most importantly to me, it's going to allow us to start being more proactive than we have been. We feel like we're responding to things rather than getting out in front of things. That results in an additional almost $40,000 in city costs. Another part of the increase is $7,000, over $7,000 in vehicle charges that were increased over last year's budget. Really, that's just bookkeeping. We're taking that from one city account and putting it in another city account. So to the taxpayer, it's not an increase, even though it looks like an increase in the community development budget. Without these 2 things, the increase would have been less than 2.5%. The Planning and Zoning Division, within the last year, we've processed 2 comp plan amendments, a whole bunch of land use approvals, 8 rezonings, 7 CUPs, 6 site plan approvals, 4 plats or subdivisions, and a variance. Those are the kinds of things that go to the Planning Commission and to you. A lot of what we do are administrative approvals. There are some of these types of things that we do in-house that you never see. My guess is for every 1 land use approval you see, there are another 3 or 4 that are done administratively. We process amendments to the zoning ordinance, for example, accessory structures and bulk nonconformities. And just a few of the plans that we've looked at were Menards, O'Reilly, and Pizza Luce. The goals for next year to continue to update the zoning ordinance. We've really cleaned that up a lot over the past 5 years. We're doing it in a piecemeal fashion. We'll keep doing that. Review the comprehensive plan in context of developing a new housing policy. And I should pause there for 1 second and tell you that the budget we're showing you doesn't include any cost for the housing visioning or policy that we've talked about. What we've anticipated is that coming through the HRA budget and really being led administratively through the HRA. If that's something that the city wants to do differently, we can sure do it differently. We'd have to find money in the city budget if that was the case. To research effective land use tools related to emerging issues and hire and train this new position. The expenditures, you can see the personnel costs increasing, as I talked about. The other services and charges have actually gone down from the 2012 to 2013, and the funding sources remain just about the same. I like to show these slides just to show you that there's very little that we have control over that we could cut from. It's a pretty lean budget. 72% of our planning and zoning costs are for staff salaries and benefits. And then a whole slew of things, like I said, we have zero control over. What we pay for our portion of this building is 15.5% of our budget. What we pay for our computer services are 3%, office supplies, all those kinds of things. Really the only things that we could cut would be things like professional development. And, I don't, with that being only 1.1% of our budget, I don't think that that's a good idea. We like to keep people trained. Our inspections division, and when we say results in the past year, this would be September 1st of 2011 to August 31st of this year, issued 4,832 permits, performed almost 6,600 inspections. We've collected permit, plan review, and license fees of just shy of $1 million. Total valuation of building permits in that time, almost $64 million worth of improvements in the community. Issued rental licenses to 222 apartment buildings, 111 duplexes, and 594 single-family homes, and conducted 655 point-of-sale inspections.
That's additional family homes that we did from the year before? Or
No, that's the grand total.
grand total? Okay.
The goals, just to complete final inspections and issue the certificate of occupancies for several large redevelopment projects. As you know, there are a lot out there. Provide information to contractors and owners about changes to the new 2012 building codes that would become effective next year. This is a big thing for our inspectors. They've spent this year learning those building codes, and will spend next year implementing them. And then really to just continue the degree of service that they have out there. Again, the expenditures on this, the personnel costs have gone up just slightly. Overall, the inspections division, I believe, went up about 2.3% by itself. And just again, where the money goes, staff salaries and benefits, almost 80%. Our computer systems, over 7%. Contract inspectors, we still do use Bloomington and this is a lot of it's through environmental health, but we also use independent contractors for some of our electrical work. Rents and utilities, 3%. Vehicles, uniforms. So again, all these kinds of things that really we wouldn't even have the ability to cut even if we were trying to. So that's it for community development. If any questions you might have.
Questions, Council? You guys are busy. Got a lot on your plate.
Yeah. Thank you.
You know how to do this, don't you? Or you need me? You just pull down on that.
Okay. Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'll be presenting the Public Works budget, the 2012 revised and 2013 proposed. And the Public Works, we provide some of the basic services for the city, the clean water, responsible disposal of wastewater, safe, timely transportation, pleasant, functional parks. We're going to continue to do that. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of highlight what changes that will affect the budgets and adjustments that are going to be made. And I'd like to separate those comments into four parts. I'm going to zero in on the general fund, which is mostly the property tax portion in a second. Capital projects, and even though the capital projects aren't housed in Public Works, some of those have a pretty big impact on what we're going to be doing this coming year, and I'm going to highlight a couple of those. We have an internal fund, the city garage, and that's how we pay for equipment and take care of equipment. And finally, I'd like to say that we're not going to talk at all about the utility funds. We're going to do that like we did last year. We get some very late information from the Met Council on the sewer rates, and so we're going to do as we have done the last couple of years. And on October 23rd in a study session, we'll get a chance to just zero in on those alone.
Keep raising.
This sheet is really the entire Public Works General Fund budget on one sheet, and I'm going to highlight some of those numbers that you see colored there. At the top, in the administration portion, you'll see a slight reduction there. We'll have an employee, a senior employee that's retiring, and we'll backfill that with somebody probably on an entry level, and that shows up in the budget in this fashion. The thing that the biggest change in the budget you'll find in the streets budget, that one I have in purple that shows that there was an increase in this year's revised budget. I'm going to repeat that and discuss about that on the next sheet. And that purple number affects the blue numbers on the bottom that causes some increases in the revised and the next year's proposed. And I'm going to come back to those numbers. First, I repeated those blue numbers up there to show that there is an increase in the revised budget this year of 1.29%. That is explained mostly from an increase in the seal coating. We did a major seal coating, and the pavement management program identifies the area that needs to be done. With the continued increased costs in oil and that are being affected by these kind of functions, we had to increase in the streets line item 6315 some $91,000 in order to pay for the seal coating costs. So that shows up in the 2012 revised, and that's why that drives the entire increase in the Public Works budget.
Councilmember.
I just want to share, I've had at least several residents that have contacted me to say they did seal coating in our neighborhood. This was on our quadrant. And they said that whoever was doing it was doing an excellent job. They didn't put too much gravel on. It was, when they got the notice saying, it's going to be happening in your neighborhood, they all went, oh no, not again. But they were very pleased with how promptly it was done and how well done.
Well, thank you. I'll pass that along to Derek Anderson and the contractor. We contract that work, that perform that work. So that's a net $91,000 increase, but you'll notice that doesn't match the $51,000. Actually, even though there was a $91,000 increase in the seal coating, there was other places we were able to save and pull down, so we didn't need to have an entire $91,000 increase. It was a $51,000 increase on the bottom line in streets. And I did say that is with franchise fees. So actually, even though we're talking about general fund, that's not property tax money. We get that money from the franchise fee, so there's an increase in the general fund that is not necessarily reflected in the property taxes. Finally, something else I'd like to highlight, we're kind of booking a reduction in the use of salt. We've been, we went to that recalibrating. You never know for sure, because if you get a very bad snow or ice year, you're going to use a lot more salt than you don't. But with our new methods, we're sure that on average we can reduce that number, and so we reduced that salt use down by 40%, which is a real savings due to just our more finely tuned method of putting salt on the street, which we think still keeps the street safe, but we're doing it in a more maybe environmentally sensitive way. And also identified in the budget in 2013 is a GIS IT coordinator position. That's partially general fund. We're funding this position in the utilities also, but also some of it will be used in streets. We made a pretty significant reduction in both supervisory management staff and administrative staff when we went through the budget cuts over 5 positions, and those came out of those kinds of functions in order to give the tools needed by the remaining supervisors to make sure that they have the tools that they need to do their job well, to give good customer service, to make sure that the work gets done effectively, and to make sure that the assets out there in our streets and pipes and that sort of thing are taken care of. We need these kind of state-of-the-art computerized systems, and we want to make sure that we are staffed to be able to adequately take advantage of that. Now, the next section, I mentioned that we're going to talk about capital improvements. There are some significant projects. We finished the 76th Street project from 12th to Cedar. We kind of completed the planning for the Richfield Parkway. That's the really extending from 63rd to 65th, and I can report that the the people that we hired to do the appraisals have finished the appraisals. All of the property owners have agreed to have their properties appraised. They have not yet seen it yet, these putting the packages together for the offers, but I think we're on schedule that we had talked about a month or so ago. In 2013 is going to be a busy year. We're going to be bringing to the council at next week's study session the Taft Legion stormwater treatment. It's an agreement that we have with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District.
Finally
Now
got
the
through.
agreement is finally finalized. We've been able to come to agreement. The thing has been kind of strung out, but we'll report on that at the study session next week. We'll also, in 2013, if the residents do come in with the petition and petition to have the project done for the rest of that section of Richfield Parkway, we'll be doing 63rd to 65th Streets. The next bullets are kind of forecasting. I think with the federal money and the county money that is going to be available to redo our county roads, this is going to be a very big deal for the city, for certainly for our department, I think for the city council and the policy direction. We're going to get a chance to kind of give a fresh look to these county roads, and we want to do that right. So we're going to go through a very comprehensive planning process on the front end, so we have good guidance from the council, Transportation Commission, Planning Commission, that we built these roads the way you want them. So that's just kind of forecasting that. Need to highlight the one internal fund, which is, and the reason they call it an internal fund, it's funded when we get a police car, for example, the police division pays for it, and when we get a piece of fire equipment, the fire pays for it. It comes out of those divisions, and that's where you see it. This internal fund then is where we pay for the repair and the purchasing of this equipment. I'd just like to highlight there continues to be a high level of what I call interagency involvement to try to influence regional policy. I highlighted in red the ones that I think that we have been, and I think in the next year we're going to be a lot of activity with MnDOT and the corridor commissions. The federal government finally approved a funding bill, and that's going to affect how MnDOT, the Met Council, looks at how projects they're going to fund. I think we can take a fresh look at the underpass to see what this funding does and how that affects that. I think we should take a look at that. Hennepin County with the county roads, we're going to be working with them unlike that we have as long as I've been here with the reconstruction of these county roads. This is going to be a very big deal, and we're going to be working with them pretty closely. Three Rivers Park District, we completed that east-west leg of the bikeway path that on 76, 75th. That north-south section now is coming up and going to be partially constructed through Taft Lake and the Richfield Parkway, and they're going to complete the job, not this coming year, I believe it's the year after that. So, but there continues to be involvement with those. I put on here just that new position that I told you about. Here's the org chart for Public Works, and that light green in the bottom left. I know the writing is kind of small there, but that's where the new position would be housed in our organization. So just a reminder, we'll be back again on October 23rd to talk about the water and the wastewater and storm water budgets.
Isn't MCS going to up our charges again?
Yes, they did. 10%, a little over. We just got the letter.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Smacking everybody.
I have a question.
Questions?
Go ahead, Councilman.
Me and the neighbor were out looking at trees today, and I'm just curious, we saw the red tag trees with the emerald ash borer, and they seem the leaves are turning yellow. My concern is our inoculation working, or are we going to be dealing with a lot of emerald ash borer cut downs?
Right. Well, that's a great question, because we're going to have a presentation next week at the beginning to talk about that.
Oh.
Basically, the red dot is not the emerald ash borer. We don't have any confirmed emerald ash.
I meant the tags that are on there, the red tags. There's a red tag on these.
Oh, that maybe that shows. I see. Yes,
Yeah.
that it was inoculated.
Yeah.
We've completed the inoculation. We have every reason to believe it's going to be effective. It's very close because now it's over at the golf course, the Fort Snelling golf course.
Yeah.
And our forester is going to be here at the beginning of the meeting next week and give you an update. Is there any other specific?
Well, the question was, are we going to be concerned if this inoculation didn't work? Are we going to have to worry about a budget where now we got to cut down all these?
There would be a significant, huge budgetary impact if we have to get
My
rid of
tree's
all
doing
of our.
fine, and I got one. Mine's got a little tag. It's
Yeah.
inoculated.
So, yeah, we firmly believe that this inoculation and all the tests and everything that's been done through the universities indicate that this is an effective tool And we'll, now our only question is how soon do we come back? We know it's effective for 3 years, so we'd start over again next year. The results from the universities we haven't heard a good indication that it goes any further than 3 years. Some of these tests were 3 years only because they inoculated only 3 years ago and they didn't know. There's a heavy carryover, certainly into the third year, and I haven't heard anything yet about anything into a fourth year. So we may need to start inoculating again next spring.
If I could just add to that, Madam Mayor, members of the council, it goes back to a discussion that we had a long time ago, a couple of years ago, when this emerald ash borer first came on the scene, and cities across the country were losing hundreds and thousands of ash trees. And as you can imagine, and it was an area in St. Paul where they had a clear-cut neighborhood of ash trees. The costs for the city of Richfield would be into the millions of dollars if we had to deal with cutting down ash trees, because we have, probably over 5,000 or 6,000 ash trees in this?
Over 3,000.
Yeah. So we went on the other tact of inoculating the trees, and that's at a very, very minor fraction of the cost of what it would take to cut the trees down. And so if we have to start over again, in 3 years re-inoculating, that's something we'll be taking a close look at, because, that's going to be money well spent. And what does it cost for a year of inoculating, Mike?
Well,
Border, I don't want to put you on the...
Not counting staff, and we've bought
Right.
all the equipment, and we would just mostly be buying that. And I'll in that presentation, I'll make sure to bring that number rather than shoot from the hip.
Okay. That would be good. That's good for folks to know.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Madam Mayor and members of council, I am presenting the Recreation Services budget tonight. And we'll first start out with our general fund divisions, the first one being Wood Lake Nature Center. I've listed 5 highlights here that actually are not part of the general fund. I wanted to demonstrate that we continue to bring in outside money to carry on much of the operations there. We've completed an ADA compliant dock. We're having our second annual Birds and Birdies tournament in 2 weeks, and that's a fundraiser. We've actually have this very long boardwalk that is in need of repair, and we have to do it in section by section because it's expensive. We completed a 20-foot renovation of a 20-foot section. This was our 5th year of our prairie restoration project, which of course was funded with outside money that was donated to us. And then our 10th annual Urban Wildland Half Marathon. So here's what's happening with our budget. Our spending for 2012 is a little less than what we had budgeted. And for next year, we're looking at a 2.8% increase. Our revenues took a dive in 2012 from what we expected, and that's due to no snow. We didn't have any snow, and we usually get a fair amount of income from our cross-country ski revenue, but this last year we didn't get any. What's making up for that revenue loss, though, in this year and next year is we continue to have a growth in our birthday party programs, and our community garden plots are always at capacity. Next division is our recreation division. Some highlights there is we increased our summer concerts program. We actually added another day where we had more kids types of, during the day, kids types of concerts. We hosted a brand new ice fishing event. We continued to coordinate the 4th of July, but are taking the lead on coordinating the Open Street at Penn Fest event coming up in a week and a half. We also are beginning to change some of the items that we're selling in our concession while trying to make it more profitable, we're trying to introduce more healthy items on the menu at the same time. And when it comes to these active living initiatives that we're doing through Dewtown and the SHIP grant, your recreation program is really taking the lead when it comes to actually new programs that we're offering. This year, we registered 4,623 program registrants through our recreation department. So our spending this year is a little less than what we had budgeted, and 2.2% more for next year. Revenues are expected to increase about 6% for this year over planned, and 6.5% next year. One of the things that we've saved money on this year is two of our veteran programmers left the city and went to work for other cities, so now we've hired 2 new ones. Of course, when you do that, it's at a much lesser rate. They have to go up through steps. So we saved $26,000 that way. We also had a very limited outdoor ice season, so saved some money there. But some of our expenses increased by $23,000, mainly through the expansion of our concerts program, which was we used a donation to fund, and our EBT costs were also more, but those were funded by a grant as well. So some of these things that we've had to add into our expenses were covered by grants. Okay, our third division is our administrative division, and some highlights there is, as you well know, we're finishing our Honoring All Veterans Memorial. The skate park is done. We're just letting the grass grow a little before we open it up. We've obtained funding and coordinated the Open Streets event at Penn Avenue, which I've mentioned. We've completed step 1 of Minnesota Green Step Cities, and I haven't really been talking about that because we've been putting a lot of that on hold with all that we're doing, and as soon as the Open Street event is done, we'll jump right back into it. But we've got step 1 done, and we installed new play equipment at Roosevelt Park. So we're expecting to spend a little less than what we had budgeted this year, and at about 2.9% more next year. And it's mainly due to some credit card expenses. Where more and more people are using their credit card to pay for recreation programs, mostly online. So that's starting to catch on now. Another thing that's affecting our expenses are trips that we offer for seniors. Seniors aren't taking as many trips, major trips. They're choosing to spend their leisure dollars here in town, which is good. Interdepartmental charges for construction management to save some money. We're not paying the Public Works Department. I budgeted a little more for their help with the Honoring All Veterans Memorial, and I decided to take that on myself just to save the money. But the Public Works Department did coordinate the skate park and did just an excellent excellent job of that. So this is a summary sheet looking at a slight decrease of expenditures for this year for all 3 divisions, 2.5% collectively for next year increase in expenses. But our revenues look a lot more healthy than what we thought, and so generally this is a very positive impact to the general fund.
Jim, could I have you go back and just talk for a second? You talked a couple of slides back about the Veterans Memorial Project.
Yeah.
Where do we stand with that in terms of when, I keep on going over there and seeing how far we've progressed, and it looks more and more like the finished product each week, but can you tell us where you are and when we expect to have that done?
Sure. So at this point, they're fabricating the glass. I call them prisms. They're not really prisms. And they're actually making the glass pieces and the metal, and that is the metal brackets. And that actually has to be fabricated outside. And that's putting a hold on the finishing of the columns because they attach that to the two middle columns. The granite is on order. We'll be installing the granite tablets in the next couple weeks. Those are getting engraved right now with the tablet 6. And then next Tuesday, I'm bringing to you an irrigation contract. We've actually decided not to put in all the irrigation, mainly because the funding for it comes in later. And we're getting this landscaping, so we really need to have the irrigation come in sooner. So we've redesigned it and have a much downscaled irrigation system that we're proposing that we can handle with the contingency money we've planned for the monument. So pending your approval next Tuesday, starting next Wednesday, we'll be installing the landscaping and irrigation. So we hope to have it all done by the end of the month, maybe by the end of sometime in October. So we're still on track on doing that this spring, or this fall. All right.
If I can.
Please.
We were over at the Veterans Memorial on Labor Day, and it's really shaping up. It was really fun to visit. And refresh my memory, who is it Joe Dobson, the Confederate soldier whose marker is there? Remind me who that is.
Yeah, I don't
Do you
know
remember?
if that's his first name or not. I can't remember his first name, but he's the Civil War soldier that was buried by mistake in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And so we brought his gravestone back, and that's embedded into that one of those GRFC rocks. And then on the other rock was the old plaque, the World War I plaque that was dedicated to the city right after World War I, almost 100 years ago. So
Where was that taken from?
that was actually in our city hall.
In the city hall, okay.
Yeah.
That's what we thought.
Yep.
Yeah. So was the gentleman who was the grave site for Mr. Dobson, was he actually a Confederate soldier or a Union
He was
soldier?
a Union soldier, and
Okay.
he lived in Richfield.
God, that's what I thought.
And he lived
Okay.
in Richfield.
You can really see that too now from the farmer's market area. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
striking now. It's amazing. what that's done.
And will there be, I assume there will be some sort of explanation, for instance, for that particular monument and for markers for the statue and all of
Right.
those things?
We, on the pedestal, the center pedestal, we have two, we call them storyboards, that will be engraved. And one tells the story of Iwo Jima and the statue, that sort of thing. The other just is general information about the monument itself. And then we have a third area right as you walk up the path that kind of tells you this is the Honoring All Veterans Memorial and gives some basic information too.
Jim, the one thing I'd like you to mention, we are cutting that berm along Portland Avenue. That's going to be cut down as part of the final landscaping, so that the monument will be very visible from Portland Avenue, and you don't have that berm obstructing the view. And I think with that, we'll have to remove one tree, I think, but that's the only tree that would be removed. But again, it's going to create
We'll get calls.
Pardon me?
We'll get calls.
Yeah, well, it's probably a mahogany tree. But at any rate, that's going to really make it visible from the street. And I get so excited about that memorial and that project, because I think in the future when that gets done, I think you're going to have more and more events being held there, and it's going to become really a big deal for veterans across the state of Minnesota.
In addition to that, we're putting a new monument sign on 64th and Portland that will explain that this is Veterans Park and the farmers market's there, the mini golf's there, but it'll also say Honoring All Veterans Memorial. So, I think there'll be a lot more visibility from Portland. So let's move on to our enterprise funds. We have our ice arena division is in there first, and a couple highlights there. We've continued to do these tournaments, skating competition, but the big budget story there is when this budget was made, we made a big staffing change. We eliminated a full-time employee, one that did a lot of our mechanical maintenance, and we substituted that for some contracted services, mainly because we had switched out to brand new equipment of the ice arena. It's so much more sophisticated now, and we saved $41,800 doing that, combined out of all these three divisions I'm presenting. So beginning with the ice arena, you see the savings this year of 5.6% than what we had originally budgeted, and then for next year a 2.6% increase. For our revenues are a little less than what we've expected, and a lot more coming in, and I'll explain that. In 2013, we have a $129,000 capital transfer in there, and it's for three things. One is for skate tile, the other is for bleachers improvements, or repairs, I should say, and then interests that we receive from our recreation fund. So that's the difference of our revenue there. For our expenses, the interest we had planned was more than what we're going to bring in, and the interest rate is just lower, so Chris set it at a lower amount. And also, our concession revenue is less than what we had thought too, and so that covers the ice arena. Outdoor pool, big story here is we had a fantastic year. And when this budget was prepared, it was, of course, before the pool even opened. So we're going to be, our actual expenses and revenues, our revenues will be much higher. In 2011, we had 33,600 people come to our pool. And in 2012, with the heat and that sort of thing, we had a 40% increase, 47,000. Wow. And that was a record year since we renovated the pool in 2002. So we had a record attendance. Part of this was because we did a living social deal at the beginning of the season, and it was a 6-day thing, and in that 6 days, we've sold over 1,000 season passes, and so we're going to do that again. That was a really good move. We also decided to switch around some things on our concession. We reduced the number of items that we sell, and we threw out the ones that were not, did not have a higher margin, and we just stuck with the higher margin ones. So less choices, higher margins, and we think that we're about 20% increase in revenues over last year's actual.
And what about the floaty? What's the floaties that you're doing, the expansion on that?
Well, that's part of our capital. That's for next year. We're planning on introducing a floatable into the pool, into the deeper end of the pool, and that's just an attraction that we think will attract more teenagers to it. And
so
some of the
floatable.
Some of them you can climb, some of them you can slide on, but they're actually anchored to the bottom of the pool, and it's a pool floatable that it's like play equipment, but it floats.
Oh, interesting.
In 2012, we're spending 4.2% more than what we had planned, and that's mainly due to increase in contractual services. And I had mentioned that we had eliminated a full-time employee. That employee did pool maintenance, pool mechanical maintenance for us, so we were contracting much of that work out in the amount of $11,500. We were strapped by the state unfunded mandate to put in a ADA compliant chairlift. Even though we have a ramp, we were required to also put in a chairlift for $1,300. And then in 2013, our capital outlay increases go up. That's why the 13% increase in 2013, and that's because of this pool floatable that we're getting. And that, of course, is paid through by liquor store proceeds, and then our pool painting. So you'll see our revenues go up as well in 2013. And 2013 is our last internal loan payment on our pool renovation that we did in 2003. So 10 years. Okay, special facilities, which consists of our mini golf and our shelter revenue. We had a great year. We, of course, signed a 7-year agreement with Wheel Fund, and they did some great improvements. And we've been getting very good reports on the quality of the food that they're serving there, the ice cream, the malts, as well as just the nice work they did on renovating some of the exterior, including that
I see
nice.
more people stopping by there to get stuff.
It's very good. It was a good decision.
Yesterday, there was people all day long while we were there picnicking that were going through the mini golf. It was full all the time. It was a good business.
So beginning in 2013, we'll actually become profitable there. And another noteworthy thing that we've had to contend with that affects our budget is what we've had to do to curb the barn swallow nesting. So going on to the expenses, quite a bit of increase of expenses this year than what was expected, 35%. And there's a couple things related to that. It's mainly the barn swallows that are costing us that. And we haven't spent this money yet, but we want to spend money on netting. As soon as they're gone, we install some nets. And then we don't have to worry about removing the nests anymore. And we'll be in full compliance again, with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And so we haven't bought it yet. We're going to come to you with that decision sometime soon. That's mainly the reason for the increase of expenses. In 2013, our expenses go way down, and it's because our depreciation costs finally have expired, and Chris has given us a great gift there, and that makes us profitable for the first time. Thank you, Chris. So I guess those are the highlights there. We also plan to do a flea market. I increased both the revenue and the expenses by $4,000 for this year. The flea market never happened. We were planning on doing it in August and September, and they decided, no, let's wait till next year and we'll do it for the full season. They thought that would be better. So, this budget will actually be better than it looks because we're not spending that.
Would that be a specific day of the month or something? Or?
Well, we were looking at Fridays before, and but we would start it in June and go through the whole summer instead of in August. They're already kind of set up elsewhere.
Yeah.
So
These are more upscale than they used to be, too. It'd be kind of cool to see what they come up with.
So that's it from Recreation. Any questions?
Thank you. A lot of great things going on.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, I have some highlights for 2012 from the liquor operations. Two areas I always come talk to you about, sales and profitability. That's because that's what we do. This year for sales have been very, very good, starting in, I'd say, March, just because we got off to an early start. There's a trend in Minnesota of locally made beers. They call them craft beers. That's just one hot item this year, and we're trying to do our best with the supply of the small supply of local beers that are made and feature them in our stores, and that's been a real boon this year. Sales are up 8.1% currently, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but that's over $500,000 in increase for the year. So if it starts snowballing like that, we could probably hit that $12 million mark this year instead of next year. Profitability, the same thing. Profits are up this year. Some of it is due to some of the expenditure reductions we've done this year. I'll get to that in a moment. So we're almost to $1 million profit. I hope that we maybe can do that this year, next year for sure. Sometimes when we can't increase our sales as much as we want to, we start from the back end and do expenditure reductions to get more profit. And we did something this year. Xcel Energy periodically has special offers that they offer to their customers. We retrofitted some of the lighting in our stores, the retail lighting, and the effect is dramatic. It's a real nice bright light. Xcel paid for about half of the improvements. It wasn't a very large. I think I did a council memorandum with the total expenditures and what Xcel participated in. We did the Penn Liquor Store and the Cedar Liquor Store for retail lighting, and then we also did LED lighting in the refrigerated cases, and that's a real clean, crisp lighting, real energy efficient, and they last for years. We did that at the 77th Street store, Cedar and Penn, and like I said, we're even doing our upgrading our soft drink merchandise, as you can see up here, like Coca-Cola, and they have those LED lights in there, and they're also very efficient. So we're going to save some money on those expenditures. One item that I did a lot of work on it and implemented in March was changing our credit card and debit card processor. We've already incurred some substantial savings. When we started in March, I think the first month we saved $2,100 on credit card processing fees. The second month, which was April was $5,100. May $4,300, and June almost $5,000. That's just in 4 months. So it's dramatic. We went from paying about 2.5% on credit card processing fees and debit card fees to now we're about 1.8. And everybody uses debit cards and credit cards now. It's we don't accept checks anymore, and it's a little bit of cash, but most of it is debit and credit card. Okay, we talked about facility improvements at our goal-setting session, and we've been working all summer on with Wold Architects on improving the 64th and Lindale location. I've got some artist renderings here in a small. The next few slides will be larger than that, but what we've got planned is new energy-efficient windows in the front, new entryway, the entry doors. They'll be all ADA compliant. There'll be a knee wall in the front with a brick face on it. We're getting rid of the drop ceiling, which really doesn't look very well. It's probably 40 years old. We'll go to an exposed ceiling, real contemporary look with polished cement floors, and all new display shelving and checkout area. And of course, everything's going to be energy efficient down from the lighting and the beer cooler. And we started out with just retrofitting and improving the beer cooler piecemeal. Strong recommendations, don't do it. It's just like things that happen in your house when you start on something and you figure, I'll just fix that. And it actually costs you more in the long run because you're using old mechanicals and stuff. So that increased the costs. At the next council meeting, we're going to be asking the council to reject the bids that came in. They came in higher than we anticipated. So the project we'd like to get started in January of this upcoming year, because if we did any improvements now, it would bring us right into our holiday time, and I don't want to jeopardize the sales at that time. Landscape and soffit and fascia also would be the improvements. That's kind of an architect's rendition of the interior. We'd move the office from the rear of the store up to the front so the manager can interact and react to things instead of walking all the way from the back. It's a safer. What do you think?
Nice.
I think it's
Very
We're real excited about this because
Yeah.
that store is tired looking. It's kind of dark, and with all
very
that
modern, very right?
Yeah, all the new stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
It's a great location to do it in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Bring a lot of new
people talk about, well, you should have just leveled the place and started brand new. Well, improvements like this are going to be about a third of the cost of redoing the whole store again, plus being out of business for 8-10 months.
Yes, now.
Then it's not cost efficient.
Are you going to close the store, or how
Yeah.
does that work?
Yes, the store would have to be closed for at least 4 weeks. There's some front-end work and some back-end work that could be done, say if there were contractors in there.
But then you could choose the time when this, when.
Yes,
the
and
store-
January is a perfect time. We were talking about September, which is kind of a slow month, but then you always run the risk of, I've heard that now retail expansion is real brisk right now, and you run the risk of, oh, we can't get your shelving for another 3 weeks, or we can't, there's a component in the beer cooler that's coming from Texas, so it's just safer to do it at the beginning of the year, and we can kind of take our time and plan it a little, implement it a little better. And what we're going to do with staff is just blend people into the other locations. Some people may want to take some time off or go on vacation, and I think it'll work out a lot better this way.
Question. I looked at the looks of that, it's nice. I met with Von Hansen, the guy, the meat man, and Chris just gave me this report on profits, because he likes to put his stores in where there's a good liquor store, and he was happy with the numbers that we supplied him, and I hope he comes forward. He's actually talked to Wellington already, and
That would be dynamite.
he was pretty positive at the time. He was worried about parking in the shopping center with the LA Fitness being there, but anyway, what happened after that, though, is I happened to look at the numbers for the shops at Lindale, and it kind of concerned me. I'm not a CPA, so there's probably something going on here, but the net income for 2011 is 27,000, and for 2010 it was actually a negative number.
Well, we made money last year for the first year.
Okay.
And then this year, I think we'll do even better because the sales have increased. I think in the last 4 years, we're up to almost 30% increase in a 4-year amount of time. There's increased traffic there. It's just we got to get it. There's a certain point where you kind of break even, and we still haven't gotten that sales momentum has to roll. And I think we're doing it because we're getting a lot of corporate business from Toro now that the bridge is open. U.S. Bank.
Yeah.
That was a real boost for us. You could see the day that they started moving people in.
So my question is,
I'm sorry.
was it Lindale Bridge that caused
Definitely.
a negative number in 1 year and
Oh, yeah.
24,000 the next year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 bridges were closed. That's right. 76 was closed.
Right.
Was it the year before
Yeah.
that? Yeah, that really hurt because then you break somebody's purchasing pattern. You know, they go someplace once a week and they do their other shopping in the area. If you cut that entry off, they go someplace else and they may find that they like to shop there and change their whole pattern. So we're getting people back that we saw years ago. And we have a really good staff at that store. They're good at
Yeah, they are.
real good customer service.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Fred, what was the person you were talking with? What was the business?
Von Hansen Meats.
Oh, meats.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Von Hansen is interested, and
That'd
I
be good
connected him
business.
with Wellington, and he told me that the conversation went well the first round.
Good.
But he was concerned about parking. He was worried about how much parking the LA Fitness would take away from the other building.
Well, I guess there's always.
I said, don't worry about it. You want a full parking lot.
Nobody can hear you.
Oh, hi.
The Lindale Garden site's always another place if he doesn't. I mean, 'cause
No,
Cohen's
he
still
wants to
working,
be with Wellington.
Does he?
Yeah, I mean, he wants to be there
Closer?
because it's all new buildings, yeah. So, anyway, thanks.
Sounds good.
Madam Mayor, can I just add before Bill gets completely through? We have sat around and Bill and I have spent a lot of time in about the last year, but mostly the last 6 months talking about the positioning of the Richfield liquor operation. You know, for many years, Bill, probably 15 years, we were the #1 liquor operation in the state of Minnesota. And we were overtaken by Edina in Lakeville. Edina they have 4 stores now? they got their 3. Lakeville's got their 4. And, they have a large base to draw from, and so we were surpassed by those 2. And, we have right now, and when we talked about looking at 64th and Lindale, we've got a fantastic opportunity with all the people who are going to be coming into that area of gaining a lot of customer base there. And that's why I think this store is so important. And, I think building the momentum and getting, it's unfortunate that we weren't able to get the store opened by our holiday season this year. But, as you look at that store and you find out what has to be done there, it's like, as Bill was saying, you look at, well, we can do this with the cooler, and then you look at the cooler and it's got a rotting out subfloor, and, those are the things you absolutely, you have to do something with, so it's getting postponed. But I think we'll build a momentum by, making sure people who move into those apartments, or people who are LA Fitness or Pizza Luce who go by there, know that there's something new coming, and we'll get some pictures up of that store. And I think there's a huge opportunity to do something in terms of building that store. For many years before we put the new Cedar store in, was the #1 store in the Richfield chain, and again for many years. And I think that it'll pop back up again once we get the new store going. And brings us to the 4th store to look at, and that's Penn. The Penn store we've got to do something with, and there's all kinds of opportunities there. And everything that we do with our store upgrades, we're doing with cash that between Bill and I and Chris that we have set aside to do this. So all the Lindale store will be paid for with cash, without taking away from cash that would be going for special revenue. And then we'll be looking at something to do with Penn, because again, there's a huge opportunity for us to do something with the Penn store, which I think would involve moving it. But there's all kinds of opportunities, because that store, when Edina closed one of their stores, and Bill, you can help me with the numbers, but they closed one of their stores for a while, and some of those Edina customers came over to our store, and heck, the Penn store was up by, just huge amount of...
Over $100,000.
Yeah. Wow. So, and I'm sure we'll keep some of those customers, but if we had our pricing's better than Edina, and I believe our customer service is better. And I suppose Edina could argue with me on that, but I believe it is. If we had a nice, clean-looking store like we're going to do at 64th and Lindale, I don't have any doubt in my mind that we could grow that business, and I think we could be contending for being #1 liquor operation in the state again.
Yeah, a lot of the things at the 64th Lindale location that we've when we got into the project, a lot of it is ADA compliance.
Yeah.
The concrete has settled in some of the areas there. It's not very safe. I'd hate to see somebody, with a nice looking inside of the store go outside, hit their shopping cart, and end up in the parking lot. And so we were looking at some other areas.
The loading docks deteriorated. The stairs to the loading dock are rotting away. Those have to be, once you start looking at that, and the building's got to be tuck pointed, and there's other stuff. So,
but the architects did say that store has good bones. I mean, it's a good solid store,
structure.
And
nice size.
Structure's good, and it's laid out very well, and that location. I was always concerned that we were going to lose that corner spot there, because that's, ever since I've been here, and that's been 31 years, that store's been rock solid. During the holidays, everything gets magnified at that store because of the traffic, and except for the last 3 years since.
Councilmember?
What happened about the idea of going over by Lund's? What would you project that store to be better because
I
they
think
got freeway
the Penn
visibility?
store?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
We've
Penn.
always
that would be
thought
yes, that
would
would be
a better
excellent.
location.
And that's Edina has been very successful because they're right next door to that high traffic Cub Foods, and they've got their own parking area. You don't want to put your store in the middle of 2 big stores, and then it squeezes your parking area there. But Lund's would be a very good fit. You could do a lot of cross merchandising with them, and being in public safety during the holidays, they're
full.
The traffic there is. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, Mayor and Council, that concludes the presentation of all the individual departments. I think you can see from the presentation that we put together, even though we're looking at what I keep on calling is a status quo budget, we're basically not adding a lot in terms of services or staffing, I think you can see we're doing a lot with what we have, and getting into a lot of new and exciting things. And the thing that you need to consider, of course, for next Tuesday is what you're going to adopt for a preliminary levy. And again, you know, hearing what you've heard tonight, I think we have our bases pretty well covered. We have the issue that council has talked about with regard to additional property maintenance, and you know the price tag on that's roughly $60,000, give or take. And you know, we could probably do some manipulation with that depending upon what it is we wanted to do. You know that there's a $70,000 built into the budget and into the levy that I'm saying that we probably won't be spending for that particular purpose. But if you adopt the levy the way it stands right now, of course you can't reduce it in December, but as you know, you can reduce it, and you could take and use some portion of that $70,000 to address the property maintenance issue if you want to do that.
And if I can, Your Honor?
Go.
One of the things I talked with the city manager about was whether there was anything specifically in the budget for what we're talking about in terms of some of the costs if we choose to rename 76th Street. And with the potential for moving forward on the tunnel, and I think that's something that we want to consider or at least talk about as well.
And I want to make, there's no money, there's no dollars at all in the budget for renaming 77th Street. There's no dollars for that.
Okay, well, there's 70,000 that we can talk about. Yeah.
Obviously, the coming up with some system to check houses has to be done. And it's going to be an issue. The other thing is, and we don't know the answer to this yet, at least I don't, the 4th of July committee and whether or not the carnival is going to be lost. Because there's another opportunity, because I know I feel that if they lose the carnival, we're going to have to help make up some of that money, because I don't want to see the 4th of July celebration go away because of the lack of a carnival. And this would be another opportunity where we make up the difference that the carnival would lose. I don't know what the reports are from this year and whether or not it's going to be renewed. And I was hoping we would get that conversation before we agreed to this budget.
Yeah, well.
So can we add some kind of
We
response on Tuesday?
I don't know if we can have it that quickly or not. I don't know that we can. It's something you can, obviously, again, once you adopt the preliminary levy on Tuesday, you can always reduce that levy. We'll certainly have something by the time you do a final levy. And yeah, you brought that up. That's a good point, council member. There is no money in this budget to give them any money. You're right. There's no money in here.
I don't think they can sell more buttons to make up for a difference of the carnival being there. And
that's another, that's another,
yeah.
That's our biggest.
It's another consideration. Yeah.
We can't lose that.
Yeah,
And
well, that's another.
I'm willing to support the supporting of it.
That's another consideration. Yeah.
What is the gist with the particular people who are doing the carnival? What is the issue of their concern, or is it the 4th of July committee that doesn't want the carnival?
I don't know that they don't want it. I just know that in the past there's been issues with police and city employees working down there and being scared, and issues that went on. A couple of years ago, I actually walked around with officers. It was kind of like an encampment, because we had a lot of issues going on down there. And I don't think that sends a good message to the residents.
This year?
That was 3 years ago, I think.
Because this year was down
what
there.
year we had all the Hennepin County task force, and was it 3 years ago? I think it was 3 years ago. Yeah.
But we still bring Hennepin County in.
Yeah.
That's something about the carnival that could probably eliminate.
Todd.
Okay.
Is that a huge cost as well to bring in the Hennepin County folks to the carnival?
I'll let Todd answer that. But I put a memo out shortly after the 4th of July, if you want to pull it back out and read it. And we will get a final report, and I'll have to coordinate to see where that's coming from. But
yeah, I don't have the answer whether the carnival's coming back or not, but I can assure you that our law enforcement presence could be reduced greatly without the carnival. That is the focus of bringing in, this year we brought in 15 Hennepin County deputy sheriffs to supplement our officers. And we have all hands on deck that night. Obviously, every officer available is here. We could eliminate the Hennepin County.
So that would be reduce a cost.
So there would be a reduced cost to the 4th of July committee I don't know if it would, well,
Be it what it would offset.
I don't know what they bring in off the carnival, but I don't think it would offset it, but it would help.
Well, and that would be nice to know. Get some-
Yeah, Steve, the memo that you did was, for some reason, was republished by the Patch today. It
Really?
was July 12th. I mean,
Really?
Yeah.
The 4th of July one?
I thought, yeah.
Published by who?
Yeah, I don't know, it just
Patch.com.
showed up, and I wasn't sure, I didn't know if this year's report had come back or something had happened that caused her to republish. I couldn't figure out
Have
why
they
it was there.
finalized it?
No.
I don't think they've met the final.
No.
No, she just, I don't know if she just pulled
There's
it
no
up for
final
a
report.
filler or what. It was just, it had a headline that Carnival may go away, and then I thought there was something new coming up, so I went to it, and it was your memo.
Okay, I'm not even aware of that, but no, the
Yeah, I
final
don't-
report isn't
yeah.
out, and I will, that's one of the things I'll check on after this is over with. I'm making notes of things that
Okay.
council
All right.
members
Because
asked
this is
me
the
to
year
do.
the contract is up now.
I
Right, 'cause
thought
that's the
there's
reason
another
that-
year, and Jim Toppetshofer can speak to that.
I think this is the end of the contract.
Too.
It's not, it's next year is the
It's
end.
next year?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got one more year.
And the Sun Current on their webpage, they did a story on actually the memo that was written.
Okay, so it was the
And
Sun Current as opposed to the Patch. I knew I saw it today.
Yeah, it was
I
the
couldn't
Sun
remember
Current. And I believe where that came from is one of the previous meetings, I think someone mentioned that, I think maybe Fred, you had mentioned that, you know, you'd in light of this memo, you'd want to make sure that the carnival is covered, or maybe the city
I
consider
said
doing
that at a
that.
previous
I
council
think
meeting.
that's
Yeah,
how
you
it
did.
got brought
Oh,
to the
okay.
attention of the Sun Current, and that's how it got in. And we haven't even talked to the 4th of July committee about this yet. We normally do that in September and October. We kind of present them our evaluations, that sort of thing. And so we're going to have to sit down with them soon. I would imagine we would probably go the same route and maybe do a study session with them to discuss the carnival. Because the authority you have over the carnival is, you know, they sign the contract with the carnival, but you have the authority to give them their event license. And you can say you can say before you give them that license that we don't want a carnival. And so that's the authority you could have as a city council over the
That
carnival.
just give us one more year to think about this,
Yeah,
but I
for
think
some
it's
reason, I was
worth
told at the end of this
discussing.
year, and that's why we had to make a decision if we wanted to let them sign a new contract.
Yeah, I thought it was this year as well, but
You're the one who told
I
me.
looked at, maybe I told you,
Yeah.
but I looked at the contract and it looks like it's good for next year too.
Oh, excellent. But still, I think it's worth looking into before it gets too close
Yeah.
and last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to give them notice if
Yes.
you aren't going to renew them.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
should.
Oh, yeah,
I do too.
absolutely.
Other things that we should be discussing for the budget. We have time on Tuesday as well, guys. So if you come up with or think about things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Thank you, council. Any other comments?
No,
Seeing
I
none, I
think-
call this meeting adjourned. Thank you for everyone.